Cantina Chronicles, welcome back. We're here gathered around the proton scope in the lab with our guy Reith Silas, learning about the Blight.
Blight.
This week, our agenda is we're reviewing Tears of the Nameless by George Mann.
Yeah.
But first, I think we have some news, right? Some
A little bit of
Obi-Wan
news.
News-ish, news adjacent.
We found out that Ewan McGregor is working behind the scenes diligently to try and make Obi-Wan Season 2 happen. He's got a plan. He wants Hayden Christensen involved, and he wants there to be some like Clone Wars flashbacks to be part of the second season. And he's said he's been talking to people from Lucasfilm about
listening
it.
to our podcast.
Right.
It's all right.
He's
No,
Reed like drinking too much, Bushmills and like drunk dialing Kathleen Kennedy with like Mary Elizabeth Winstead being like, "No, it's a great idea." In the background, that's his
Anyways,
wife.
we're in the trenches. It's raining. We're in the trenches. There are droids everywhere.
Yeah, it does seem like, I mean, it could be him just putting spin on it, which, I mean, he is really good. He's so well trained at the spin machine but I feel like he works it to his advantage, where it seems like he's talking about like, these are conversations we've had. They're trying to break a season 2, which probably is BS, but the fact that he's saying it so many times out loud, he's willing it to be true, and they're like, well, we don't want to call him a liar, so I guess we're making Obi-Wan Season 2 now.
Ewan McGregor draws a lot of water in the fan base.
Yeah. I mean, and we can say you can say whatever you want about Season 1, but like, it did its job in terms of like, we got to see Ewan McGregor play Obi-Wan, regardless of like how strong or weak some elements of that script might have been. He's not the issue. He was not any of the issues, right? Like,
hold on a second. He's looking to do more scenes with Hayden Christensen.
Yeah.
I thought the whole setup was Liam Neeson appears, and you sort of aren't we going to get the Qui-Gon training stuff, like the Force Ghost training? Isn't that?
I mean, that could be the impetus to the flashbacks, right? Because you're going to have Okay, can I
Spirit Quest to learn how to be Force Ghost.
You have to have Liam.
Can I tell you? So here's my idea.
Here's
my idea for Obi-Wan Season 2. First thing, Obi-Wan never leaves Tatooine. We are done. He has not left Tatooine again since between what we saw in Season 1 and New Hope. That to me is vastly important.
Yeah.
He's now there. That doesn't mean he doesn't occasionally get roped into small things. He gets pulled into something between two warring or two rival moisture farmers, right? There's some intrigue between that. There's some violence. He's doing his Jedi thing where he's trying,
sort of like,
I'm here for it.
But he's basically often gets called in to just
adjudicate,
mediate, adjudicate. You get some action, you get a little bit there, but a little bit, not a ton. And
this is a lot like the Kenobi novel. He didn't leave Tatooine in that Kenobi novel either. He just sort of got involved in some scrapes, some local scrapes.
Yeah.
Wait, you're saying he's restricted from leaving Tatooine? Is that
yes,
sort of what
100%. He never leaves again. If he leaves again, I'm done. Okay. You barely won me over in Season 1. They barely won me over, but they did it. Never again. So the other thing is that what you find out through this is that these two are brothers. These two rival moisture farmers are brothers.
Right.
That they have disowned each other because they hate each other. They loved each other, now they hate each other. And through this, you get the flashbacks connecting. Because the one thing we've never gotten in any Star Wars is the promise that we were good friends. We've never actually seen Anakin and Obi-Wan on live action actually be really good friends and go through a mission together and in some type of unison. So I think you need that element of him, especially now that he's left Vader alive for a second time, to actually give him some good memories to think back of something positive about Anakin. We get no positive Anakin with him. That's my thought.
I have a different thought, which relates more broadly to all the Star Wars. This would be a sort of first swipe at a second bite of the apple. Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan, both were like told the hero's journey pretty directly, and I feel like, you know, we're all like, well, if, you know, the next installment couldn't be that again, so it has to be something else. And so I think then you get full powered Obi-Wan. You know, maybe I agree it'd be tough to get him off Tatooine, but I think I'd like it because I want to see some more like full powered Obi-Wan adventures. As like, and by full powered I mean like old Obi-Wan, sort of still, you know, he has to communicate with Qui-Gon Jinn. And I think that would probably be the biggest hurdle, really, is getting Liam Neeson involved, because he said several times, like, I'm kind of done with Star Wars. But then he always does another Star Wars.
What would Qui-Gon Jinn tell Obi-Wan to do in this time?
I mean, other than sit and meditate and like commune with it would be about the living force. It'd be about the living force.
Right.
Search your feelings.
Qui-Gon's not a man of inaction either. Qui-Gon was doing a whole lot. You know what I mean? So I wonder what he would say to him.
I think we saw this in a different story, and it's
do what you can, almost help who you can. I think that's
I think he wants to.
He's going to go help people out in the galaxy. Like, I don't think he. I think he helps people before he's got, you know, he's got Luke and the homestead on lock. Like he's probably has some sort of security system. I hope he installs some sort of a security system. He can be an incredibly cunning character.
Yeah.
Like he can be like a spy, akin to an Andor character, essentially, where it's just this deeply, you know, thoughtful and intelligent sort of a lead that sort of can do all this sort of MacGyver-esque stuff and just make sure the homestead is secure, essentially, and then go about the galaxy.
He can do a lot of cool stuff without a lightsaber. But it'd be great if he had it, and then, you know, so you pick and choose your spots. Yeah, I think that's one, I forget which story it was. I think it was a comic or something, but it was like Obi-Wan is really kind of weak on the living force, just like dealing with other beings and empathizing with them and connecting with them. Like that's not his thing. He's kind of more in like the cosmic force. And I mean, that's, I guess, the cosmic force is what he needs to tap into to become a force ghost. But I think, you know, I know that Qui-Gon's always just like, he's like, be mindful of the living force, which is like just not a strong suit.
Yeah. I also need to see Obi-Wan in a starfighter again.
Yeah.
Like him flying around in a starfighter is just, it's so incredible to see.
Yeah.
And it'd be cool to see a like echo of the trench run, essentially, where he
killing me here.
basically does things. He shoots like a proton torpedo, and then he just uses the force and gets it.
I love that, dude.
Critical spot. Like it's kind of like a proto trench run moment.
So when it happens to Luke, he's just like,
he doesn't like flying starfighters. Like that's why it's fun, because like you immediately have contrast for the character.
Yeah,
it's really good.
I will say, if we are bringing in Qui-Gon's ghost, that also unlocks Yoda.
Right. Yeah.
Because you have the ability of him to speak Yoda. You have like a daisy chain between.
Yeah. So you
Yoda speaks to
that's exactly
Qui-Gon.
Right.
Qui-Gon speaks to Obi-Wan.
Right. But they're both alive at this point, right? My brain's erased.
Yeah.
So yeah. I mean, actually, like a little, I don't know, a Yoda. Ewan McGregor meetup would be kind of appropriate. Would be sort of fun.
Yeah, that's actually super appropriate, honestly, because let's just, you know, let's have a meeting. Let's talk about what the Jedi can do at this point in the trajectory of where everything's gone wrong and what we can do to right things, and maybe other Jedi appear too.
Yeah, I mean, he could be like, well, okay, now I've communed with Qui-Gon. This was my task from Yoda. Maybe I need another task, and so he's just like, Yoda, hey, great news, it worked, and you know, and then Yoda could tap him into something else.
Could I make a point to, not to further my agenda and argument, but
no, please do. We're not trying to
trying
to shout you down.
No, but
I like to hear just the tattoo.
No. I'm not. No, I know you're. No, I know you're not. You're just giving. Which I like. Yes, I could totally see those things happening, and I would not.
Yeah,
I would not.
More
sit
like a
there with
wish
my arms
list,
crossed.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're.
But I'm trying to think like Obi-Wan's motivation. So at this point, he's had two major dark side characters come and try to take out Luke. You got Darth Maul, and you got
what's her name?
What's her name?
And don't forget Grand Inquisitor, who's basically
right. You've had three major dark side characters show up on Tatooine. Like, so he's clearly like, I cannot leave here because clearly like Luke's beacon of light is subconsciously drawing Darksiders here. Like, I cannot leave because every time I leave or every time I take my eye off the ball, like a Maul or a Rhea or a Grand Inquisitor shows up.
Right.
Unless concealment's a thing though too, because I do wonder if he does stay there. He finds methods to conceal Luke's sort of innate force power.
I'm about to trigger Grant.
But also the Jedi mind trick. When I saw Star Wars for the first time, I was like, he's a very kind of mystical,
Wizard,
illusionary sort of wizard, right? And I was like, I wish they would really dive into that, where he learns all these new force powers.
Yeah.
So it's not just he's overpowered or he uses all of his force power. It's more that he like learns these new abilities essentially that are like, whoa, these are secret, abilities that maybe only Qui-Gon could teach him.
Yeah. Maybe you ready for this one? So Luke doesn't really start exhibiting force powers until he's 19, right? Like, we don't see him because he's not trained. Like, we know he gets a little bit, but like, what if, we know he's had interactions with the old hermit. What if somehow, maybe on a subconscious level or through mind trickery, Obi-Wan teaches Luke how to cut himself off from the Force? Like, okay. I don't know, he does in Episode 8.
I can't wait to talk about this book in a second too, about cutting yourself off from the Force and using certain sides of the Force and that causing some sort of other effects.
We haven't really seen that until we saw Luke do it in Episode 8, right? So what if it's something that he learned to do from unconsciously through Qui-Gon and through Obi-Wan in order to shield himself, because he keeps drawing these Darksiders to him?
Yeah, I did really like actually how they wrote the Obi-Wan series to sort of make have resolution with Vader, where he's just like he's like, okay, Vader. Actually, does Vader even know that Obi-Wan's on Tatooine? He doesn't.
No, because they meet on some
weird planet, right? So he doesn't know that's his home base. Yeah. All right, never mind what I was going to say.
No. All right.
Yeah, good times.
No, I like the Obi-Wan Vader interaction in that movie.
I did too, but it's just sort of like, now he's not hunting for Obi-Wan. My thought was like, he'd be like, don't go to Tatooine anymore because there's nothing there. But what, I'm killing myself for not knowing the name of the Inquisitor from that show. The
Reva.
Thank you.
Reva.
Yeah. I mean, people might be looking for Reva, and I don't know if they can track her to, at all, or track her to Tatooine. But
that's also an interesting question. It's like, if you're doing season 2, are they going to expand at all on the path, or are they just going to leave that as like as a string, as like a
I mean,
like Ed Reva in the path?
I think I think the path should be a major part of it, because they just teased it. So I mean, they introduced it so well. O'Shea Jackson Jr. is amazing. I'd love to see him more. And Reva, and then the path, and you could open up a Cal Kestis cameo and maybe a Quinlan Voss cameo. That is a treasure trove, the path, and I think they're silly if they don't investigate.
Wait, so there's a Quinlan Voss setup in the first season too.
There is.
He's like, Quinlan Voss, he's been here, and I'm like, wait, so the Fallen Council can exist essentially.
Ooh, the Fallen Council, Grant?
Quinlan Voss,
Did you just come up with that?
Let's not blow past that. Like, you just created an amazing, just out of whole cloth. Like, that's.
I'm just saying there can be a sort of round table, right? Like,
right,
yeah,
like that's an amazing thing. Like, now we have to have the Fallen Council. Like, how is that not a thing? Give that to me now.
Gosh. Yeah, I love that so much.
But so that's the interesting thing, right? Because we know that Reva knows that Obi-Wan's on Tatooine. Reva's now part of the path. Right, so you could have this kind of, the inciting incident might be someone like a Quinlan Voss or Cal Kestis or someone else saying, like, they get into some major trouble and like, I need help, and Reva points them in the direction, and they go and go back. So maybe that's how you get Obi-Wan off, is they pull, basically, maybe they kidnap him, like maybe they straight up pull him off of like Tatooine, right? And he wakes up.
I love that
in a starship like somewhere away. Like, that to me is the only way you get him off of Tatooine is if you like knock him out.
And it's Quinlan Voss, and like Voss would do that. He'd be like, I'll get him, and he just like puts him in a sack and drags him like into a
puts him in carbonite, freezes him in carbonite. Now, just kidding.
You don't think it's someone who can basically use the information of Luke against him, sort of blackmail Obi-Wan to leave the planet?
That also
and be like, listen, I know what you're doing here, and it would be tough if the galaxy knew Vader's child was like on this planet or something. Like something that just cuts at Obi-Wan. He's like, whoa, you know way too much about what's going on here.
To do something like, you could have that as the beginning of like, Reva lets it slip that he's on Tatooine.
Yes.
Because you don't want Reva to be like, oh, he's protecting this boy. Like, you don't want her to give up that information. You want her to be true. So then you have to have someone really smart who's able to like connect the dots of like, why is he on Tatooine? Looking back in the past, seeing that they went to Tatooine on this mission where they found the Chosen One, like really putting the pieces together, and maybe they're the one who connect that. Vader is Anakin. Anakin, like putting all the doing the work to figure out, oh my God, we're talking about Darth Vader's child is on there. Like you can actually do if you.
I love that the Fallen Council knows his they can be the one with the leverage on Obi-Wan, and it doesn't have to be malevolent. But it's just they can be listen, I get it,
Desperate.
I get what your mission is, and it's important, but it's no more important than our mission, which is just saving these people's lives,
saving people,
and getting them. These other Force users. How do you know they're not the chosen ones? You don't.
Or everyone matters, equally. You're just using all of your might and power and ability just to sit in this shack on Tatooine.
Right. Yeah.
Here's the thing: I was so against season 1 of Obi-Wan, so against it. I think remember we talked about it when it was revealed. I was just like, no, we don't need this. Why are we doing this? And then when he was left Tatooine, I'm like, no. And then they did it, and in just 10 minutes, you guys have already sold me on. Oh yeah, he can leave Tatooine again.
Yeah.
Right, no, but I think the version you're talking about would be a more artful take than a sort of wide appeal take.
Yeah.
I think the idea of just being more contemplative, where he's out there in the desert and then having these visions and going back to the Clone Wars and those visions being high octane, sort of massive bloated set piece.
But that could be the whole show, honestly. It's just his meditations and picking lessons from his past experiences and his memories that through his meditations.
I also want to give Hayden Christensen more to do, just because I feel bad for him, and I think he's also proved himself in the last couple of series. It's he needs a few more bites at the apple, so it overwrites some of the other stuff. We have more well-directed Hayden Christensen time on the screen than we do not.
Yeah.
I think
that could be the parallel.
Also the tutelage and the mentor stuff, that's not really there because we pass so much time without them, essentially. I mean, in the animated series you get interactions, but sort of Anakin's Padawan ship, you really don't know a lot about that time, essentially. And this is the character that becomes Darth Vader. So every mentor moment is actually precious in terms of that storytelling. And then for Obi-Wan's own learning, Obi-Wan dealing with all his failures in his teaching of Anakin in a series would be a very interesting series.
In the catharsis
that's the first season, so.
But it is and isn't. The catharsis could be he has to be sitting there on Tatooine, and it is explored a little bit in the first one. It was I created Space Hitler. I helped create the guy who destroyed everything. How much more?
How did this happen?
Space Goebbels?
This is the one thing you do a post-mortem.
Yeah, I know Goebbels. Yeah, it's good. Space Goebbels. Yeah. Good point. Anyway, and so, maybe season 2 is a little bit of him recalling and thinking this is a bad memory, and then when he's picking it apart, realizing no, it's not all bad. There are moments where we saved a lot of people, and my mentorship of him helped save this planet. Right. There's not. It's not all. I didn't create this horrible thing. Not everything is black and white. That there was good in Anakin, and maybe there still is, and maybe that's Luke's job.
I mean, another part of that, I know Obi-Wan sort of gets credit as being a mentor for Luke, but it would be cool if he got another chance to be a mentor to someone in the path. Maybe it's Reva. I don't know that he would trust her fully with his mission currently, but it's maybe he does feel I need to teach you some things before you go back into the world. You never really got a proper Jedi training, and he could be the one to do it, or that's something with the path wants him to train people that are there. And so I don't know, maybe he trains someone else, but somewhere in there's room for him to actually do a good job training a Jedi, and that would be a fun little thing. I also would just really like to connect the Jedi Fallen Order / Survivor series with Cal Kestis. It's just sitting right there, and I guess we said it a lot of times, but I think at this point, the game might come out before the show, because the show is just the
show's a ways away.
It's a glimmer in Ewan McGregor's eye, but we know at least the game they're going to start working on if they haven't already. But if so, they could make it whatever the ending of that video game trilogy is. But I kind of hope it's Tanalorr. I kind of hope they all hide on Tanalorr, and that's sort of that's where the hidden council resides, the hidden order.
Yeah.
Oh wow, this fanfic is branching. We're going.
No,
I learned it
the
from you.
fallen. It's the fallen.
The Fallen Council, the Hidden Order. There's room for both there.
you were building out the lore even more.
That's what I'm trying.
But like,
Yeah.
right, I mean, that was the big news last week. Is that like there's all this rumors that Cal Kestis is going to show up in a live action in immediate.
It makes perfect sense timeline and canon wise, right? That's sort of what people are thinking. They're like the sacred timeline is, crossing over right here.
What if there is a Hidden Order the whole time?
Yeah, I think there could be. I think there's storytelling there where there's a fallen council that's sort of like tattered robes, like they're not getting new Jedi robes anytime soon, and they're just wearing what they can.
Yeah.
I mean, do you want me to take it one step forward? What if that is going on in the background this entire time, and that's part of what we see in Rey's movie?
Yeah.
That the Fallen Order reasserts themselves while she's building her council, like building her new Jedi Order, and they're like,
"That's brilliant."
We've
been here the whole time.
They could have been at the Battle of Exegol. You know, we don't know,
but the thing is, we know every member of the council when it falls. That is the sort of commercial material you're dealing with. In that, like, I think we've all scanned that room several times over in the movies that were given around the fall, and then the comics sort of then fill in all the gaps of who's where and who.
But it could be
it's a new council.
New council. It could be
Quinlan Voss. It's Obi-Wan.
What's her name? Asajj Ventress.
Asajj Ventress.
Oh yes,
guys.
Okay, keep going. Let's go.
Mace Windu.
Mace Windu.
Mace Windu is the Grand Master of the entire thing, because that's a total Mace Windu move, right? Like
Fallen Council is a Mace Windu idea. Yeah.
Guys, who? Get us Lucasfilm's number stat. Get us immediately. We will give them.
I'll work for $15 an hour.
This is now a timing and release thing though. Like, when do you do a sort of like Clone Wars riff, sort of like calling everyone back sort of thing? When do you push the Clone Wars again?
Right.
That's sort of what you got to think about.
Oh,
but this is like
still wearing bits of old Clone Wars armor. Ugh. Let's go.
But think about this is. But speaking of armor, this is the ultimate plot armor. This is
armor
what,
and robes.
This is what
A++.
But this is what Lucasfilm loves, because anything that's weird or doesn't quite work, you're like, no, I know, but it was the Fallen Order. It was the Fallen Order. They were doing that. Don't worry about it. They were just being weird over there. Like anything that doesn't connect, you're like, they did it.
Yeah.
Fixes everything.
Yeah, no one takes them seriously. I mean, right?
Yeah.
What are they doing? What's their big operations? There's not really anything going on.
I think they're just hiding and trying to just pull people in and surviving. And I think that's fine. Like, they're just like, the Force will tell us when we need to get out of here.
Yeah. So, like,
they're being hunted as well.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like, we just need to stay alive, and the
Let's-
Force will give us our next mission, and we're just waiting for that. But
I'm
building
okay with the Mace
libraries,
Windu.
bringing more people in.
Yeah.
Kind of,
Do they talk about like Palpatine, and do they talk about the Empire in terms of what it is behind the veil and stuff like that?
I think so. I think they know, but I think they know they're too weak at that point to do anything directly. So they're doing what they can to help. Like, they're the people like pulling the strings that allows the Rebel Alliance to form. Right.
Wait, and so then Obi-Wan has to tell them about Anakin.
Yeah. And you know what?
He has to happen. That scene has not happened. You know what I
Another
mean?
plausible thing is that, like, even if it's led by Mace Windu, whoever, wouldn't a very organic response to the fall of the Jedi Order being like, you know what? Jedi shouldn't be involved in politics, and we shouldn't be generals in wars, and we are not the police of the galaxy. We are monks, and we need to, like, look inward.
And we're monks who are help people. When we see people, like you said, when you like just help one person. If you see someone needs help, you help them. But that's as far as we go. And that goodness spreads out. And then maybe you do have a couple stories, because you can do this whole nice fun thing, which validates that a little bit, where they save someone who saves someone who saves someone who saves someone who saves Leia, right? Like this idea that that through the will of the Force, they're actually affecting all this stuff through small actions, right? Small actions of heroics and kindness, right? Of just actually like pushing the galaxy. It's like pushing against the overpowering of the dark side. But I want to do this. I'm okay with the Mace Windu thing. So you got Mace Windu, Quinlan Voss, Asajj Ventress,
Obi-Wan, Yoda.
Well, they still have to do their job,
maybe.
so I don't think they're there. I don't think they're on it.
Maybe Yoda's against it.
Yeah.
too.
I think it's Quinlan Voss, Yoda, and Obi-Wan. I think it's like a small little group of Jedi.
No, we need all the Force
we have
users.
to play with.
Gotta explain why they're not doing
I feel
anything.
like Obi-Wan and Yoda have their missions, and they're like, no, this is what we have to do.
Cal Kestis, we got
Just
Omega.
Quinlan Voss about what's going on with Obi-Wan. Because then if you have too many people learn about that, it just gets weird, I feel like. like just one person, and then holds it against both Yoda and Obi-Wan, and it's sort of like, we need to assassinate Palpatine, and like they're like, no, we have to wait because we can use a Skywalker to help us.
Right. Yeah. There's plenty of room for stuff there, but
well, and maybe that's the tail end of the Obi-Wan series. I mean, if we're pulling it in here, is that the Shadow Council, Shadow Council, Fallen Order,
Fallen Council,
or Fallen Council, or whatever, learns about Obi-Wan and Yoda's plan, and they're like, yeah, we're not good. Keep doing that. We're not gonna interfere with that, right? Like they just learn to let them do their own thing, and trust in the Force, right? Trust that their actions are gonna coalesce.
Mace Windu's gonna be perfectly chill with another Skywalker coming into the galaxy.
He's a changed man.
I mean,
I don't know. I think Mace Windu's going straight for Palpatine and straight for Vader. Where like, it's just.
But maybe you get something
at that point,
right?
it's just a different movie altogether. It's not. It's a different feel.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, Mace Windu becoming like a pacifist is to Yoda going into exile. Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense until you think about it a million times. I don't know. It could happen. I could see a world where Mace is just like, you know what? I was wrong from the beginning, and I need to rethink all of my tenets of the Force and Jedi.
We've seen Sam Jackson do it in the past.
Yeah, I just don't think he would condone the training of another Skywalker.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
That's my point. That's all.
Yeah, he would.
But I mean, maybe that's a subplot too. Is that he does go a bit rogue? Like maybe he does go take on decide to go take on Palpatine. Like that wouldn't break anything in the timeline, right? Where he
to me that's just too cool though. Like we already saw that once, and like it's just too awesome. Like it's too epic. Where it's like I almost
we could use
just do a simple story with Dylan Voss, where it's just like one kind of Jedi comes out of the fold.
Yeah. You brought Mace Windu into this.
Small count.
I
did.
Adam did.
Adam
brought
it.
It's
all me.
Yeah.
You guys started and then I think Asajj could be in the show, but maybe she's not in the council. Essentially,
that would be a fun into an Obi-Wan series. It would be fun to add her, especially as a protagonist, not an antagonist. Like,
can you see the like logo already? Obi-Wan and the Fallen Council, like that's
him
great.
saying Ventress would be classic too. Like, Ventress.
Yeah.
Who plays Ventress? Who we casted for Ventress?
We've had so many castings for her.
Have we done this before? I don't know.
Tilda Swinton's been up there.
Oh right, the Tilda Swinton. That's right. And I'm like,
I had a Japanese actress that I've already forgotten from some show I was watching at the time.
Vanessa Kirby was great, but she's
that
too busy doing Fantastic Four, so you're not going to get her down into the TV.
Yeah. Anyways, I'd love live action Ventress. That would be great, especially interacting with Ewan as Obi-Wan would be so fun. And you could even do a flashback with Ventress too, like because I feel like the three of them like met each other at like 90% of their battles. It was like, oh, you're moving your Jedi here, your best Jedi here. It's like, then Dooku was moving Asajj to meet them.
I demand a live action Terrace Nube scene as the first scene of the first episode of that second season.
It would have to be a flashback because poor Terrace Nube.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It would be a flashback, but it would be like full on Terrace.
He's
Nube
a great character.
Chatting with Obi-Wan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be.
Because then we go to the haunting dream of seeing him like crystallized in amber or whatever.
All right, the beginning of this podcast, we're off to a really great start, guys. That was really amazing
so far.
I'm sure we could go on
A+.
forever, but this book is awesome.
This book is so good.
I mean, High
Agreed.
Republic.
Yeah.
I mentioned it last week. I had this book, Star Wars: The High Republic, Tears of the Nameless, by George Mann, and Corey Brickley gets a credit here too on my Kindle information. Because Tears of the Nameless, right? I knew we were going to find out more about the Nameless, and this is sort of like.
Can I jump in for a second about the George Mann thing? So who is named on? Well,
Corey Brickley.
I tend to read. I'm a nerd, and some of my favorite parts at the end of a book is the
a Star Wars podcast host is a nerd.
I love acknowledgments.
I don't know if I can do this.
I love acknowledgments and reading acknowledgments, and part of it I think from being a Stephen King fan. Stephen King writes some of the best forewords and acknowledgments in book history. His books aren't complete unless you read it, because he just paints the world. So I think I talked about this offline last time about how there's no audiobook yet for this. Remember, the audiobook's not out yet.
Yeah.
So I actually had to read this. The reason why George Mann in the middle of writing this book, was diagnosed with a brain tumor.
I saw. I read.
He seems to
Oh my
be
God.
doing much, much better. But like, I think part of that is that delayed. Like, this came out by skin of its teeth. It probably delays the audiobook recording because the audiobooks takes a while to record, and so. But like, so I'm wondering if that other credit is because they need a little help to get it over the finish line for major editing or something. He's doing well, but like, really quite something.
I know
when you read
he
the
said.
acknowledgements.
Yeah, he said in the acknowledgement it was a lesion. They discovered a lesion on my brain.
A
He's
lesion.
like, but
You're right.
things are much better now, which is different than a tumor.
Good to hear.
You're right.
So
yeah,
I think it was a
that's right.
bad diagnosis, and it obviously, probably consumed him for months dealing with it. But I'm hoping he's healthy.
It seems like he's healthy based on I follow him on Instagram, so he's posting a ton. He seems good.
That's good
and
to
doing
hear.
stuff. I mean, who knows with online life, but
Right.
he's around and doing stuff. But I thought it was interesting before we get into it is that he talked a bit about how that affected his writing. Because he was in a dark place, and he put his characters in a dark place.
That's all there.
And it's
in this
all
book.
there. After reading that, I went,
Oh yeah.
that makes a ton of sense because this is a
it's so
dark
good.
book.
Yeah.
Like, we're gonna talk about it in a good way. Like, I think in a wonderful way, and there's a lot of hope in it as well.
Terrifying.
But, yeah,
A lot of tough deaths in this book too. That's great.
Most sort of graphic Star Wars book I've read in a long time. I think there's a giant like Nile at one point that uses like another Nile as a weapon.
Yes.
And like is fighting with a body essentially.
using
and I was like,
a Nile as a
is
club,
insane.
basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
A
and it was
Dawotan.
but again,
Yeah.
but then again, talking about sort of the health scare that George Mann had. I mean, like, you feel that with any Nameless encounter or like just
fear.
Wreath as a character. It's just the way he's written and sort of his internality. It's very cool stuff.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, so as someone who's read all of the High Republic heretofore, it's really exciting to finally get towards the end game here, and each of these books are getting us there. And this book was pretty much the contingent that was giving us a little bit of backstory about the Nameless and where they came from, and showing us through the eyes of Wreath Silas and company how they're figuring this out. And I mean, that was really fun. Today I was like, it didn't really give me what I expected. And then I thought more about it, and then I was like, yes, it did, actually.
Yeah.
It went a different way than I thought it was going to go.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean. It did not take the path I expected, but its destination was where I expected to be, but it did not go. Yeah, it did not take the path.
Well, I think there's room for a path still existing. That's sort of. I think there's room for interpretation at the end of this book, which is so cool. I was like, there's some.
Oh, I got some major.
There's some real fun conversations about Wreath Silas as a character.
Yeah.
The Aslan Rel, Wreath Silas stuff. We can talk about that. We can talk about what the Jedi Hunter, Aslan Rel keep hinting at about Wreath Silas. We can talk about all that stuff. But and we will do that.
Aslan Rel gave them the entire key to avoid all of the horrible things that happened to the Jedi, and they just didn't know what he was talking about. But he's hinting at the Sith in this book. He's talking about the Sith in this book. I have a passage we'll get to in a moment. But
you guys,
that's my interpretation.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Totally
that's my
missed
interpretation
that.
as well.
Yeah.
I mean,
he was not talking about. He was not talking about the fact that there is like rot in the basement of the Jedi Temple. He's talking about the rot that is the dark side in the galaxy, the Sith emerging again.
If you
That's
go
my
back to
take.
Filoni math. There's a lot of Jedi.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
But I love the fact that this book is half Silence of the Lambs. Like, so many of these, so much is like Clarice going to talk to Dr. Lecter.
Yeah.
Like, that's and anytime they would be going in there, I'm like, just give me more. I want 400 pages of Wreath talking to Aslan Rail. That's all I want.
And tea.
Yeah.
Don't forget the tea. The kettle's always on.
Yeah. So just going through characters, and for people who haven't read this book but are just sort of following. I mean, so Wreath Silas, really young, newly minted Jedi. He's a nerd, but he's
Jedi Knight.
Jedi Knight. Yes, newly minted Jedi Knight. And
important because a character comes back in this book.
Right. He's lost not one but two masters. He's a bookworm, but came out of his shell. He was on the Amaxian station. He's like very cool, interesting character. But
like you're saying, he's in the lab studying the husks of the nameless victims, essentially. And
he's been tasked with discovering the secret of the Nameless, which is just like, I don't know, who's that teenager? Okay, this is the biggest job in this whole thing. That's you. And he's like, okay. Because he is studious and he's learned, and so they're like, go learn, son.
It's not a big deal, but we're all counting on you.
Yeah. I just want to say, we're all counting on you. And all the
Walks away.
yeah,
Yoda
Elzar
walks
Mann. Then Yoda
I have
comes
thoughts
in.
about
I just
the
want to
council.
say,
I
we're
do
all
want to
counting
share
on
my council thoughts later. I want council corner.
council
to
corner will
happen,
happen.
I have some.
Right.
I have some real thoughts about the strategy and logic
Right.
of the council.
All right, so character 2, Aslan Rel, he is a Jedi who has fallen to the dark side because of the Nameless. So he's kind of a Nameless expert.
And he's being kept in the basement of the Jedi Temple.
Yoda brought him back in the fold, and he immediately crashed a starship into a city.
But killed millions.
And then they're like, why don't we put you in the basement under lock and key for a
There you
minute?
go. Chill out down there for a while. Yeah.
Near the Sith Temple.
Also,
That sounds
no
like-
eyeballs. Let's just mention that. He's no eyeballs,
Yes,
right? Eyeballs
eyeless.
And Reith has to keep talking to him.
Yeah.
And he's just staring at him with his gaping eye sockets, and it's made it's described
something
quite...
something I appreciate is everyone is wary of him talking to him because they don't trust. They think he's manipulating Reith, and to the credit of this book, he's not.
He's not.
Or he may be, but Reith isn't falling for it, and that's what I love, that there was no turn where Reith was like, "Oh, you did it, you got me." Like, no, he was a Jedi through and through. He's like, "No, I know, I yes, I should be wary," and I do, and he was acknowledging throughout the book, I do kind of like him. I do kind of like, he was aware he was being manipulated, and I love that, like, throughout the entirety of it. Yeah,
That was the path the book took at the very end too, which was sort of like Reith stays the path of togetherness and Jedi code, and yet it's constantly hinted at in this book that Aslan Rel is trying to have him embrace the dark side, and that being the only path he can walk. I think that's suggested several times by Aslan Rel.
Yes.
Like, this is the one path.
He's almost
for
like
you.
a Sith recruiter. Now you guys planted the Sith thing, which I totally missed the whole time.
Let me
Well, I
read.
don't think Sith. I think dark side potential is interesting to Aslan Rel. That's what I felt. I felt that his potential in the dark side was fascinating to Aslan Rel. He was like, this could be the first Sith. This could be the return of the Sith.
Right.
This could be something interesting.
I think let me read the passage, and I think this can be interpreted two ways. One, very literal. There is the plague. What are they calling it? The rot? No, there's the blight. The blight. There's a blight in the basement, or the dark side has risen, and you're not all aware of it. So there it is. But this isn't an enemy that can be reasoned with or frightened off with a show of lightsabers. This is something much more fundamental, something that represents everything we are not. A threat so existential that we cannot even conceive of how it might have arisen. And meanwhile, we are not even aware of its creeping danger in our own midst. What do you mean? You already sense it, Reith, stirring in our depths. It's coming for us. I don't think he's talking about the Nameless. I don't think he's talking about that. He's talking about the rise of the dark side. He's talking about the Sith.
Huh. I mean, because he could literally be talking about the blight that they have not found yet at the center of the of the Jedi Temple.
Absolutely.
And I believe we know how that got there at the end of the last novel that I can't remember the name of. Marchion Ro comes back to Coruscant, and he sort of slips away into the Jedi Temple and plants the blight.
Yeah. Yep.
And which is kind of genius, because it really illuminated what Marchion Ro's motivations are more to me, because he is a nihilist, so it's just sort of like anarchy and destruction. But he wants to humble the Jedi, and when you start thinking about, like, he did that because he wants the Jedi to ask him for help, to be like forced to ask him for help,
completely humiliated and lessened.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's also what the levelers do. I think, like, we're all just like, why don't you just bring civilians with you to kill the levelers? And I think that also humiliates the Jedi, and so and they're reluctant to do that.
Yeah, they are starting to do that
yes.
in both the novels, because the other novel that we won't talk a lot about, but I did read, which is Beware the Nameless, which happens pretty close to where this concurrently.
Is that Ram Jamaran? Is he part of that?
Yeah,
squad?
that's Ram Jamaram and others, which I will talk about a bit of it. It's by Zoraida Cordova.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, really, really good. I mean, it's a junior novel. Also, masters getting killed by levelers.
Left and right.
Wait, okay.
Yeah.
This has the darkest and best described death of a master by a leveler in any book ever.
Yeah.
It's just haunting.
Kind of a
Like
horror movie.
I will think about the death of a certain master in this book
Yeah.
for months. I think. After
Yeah, I mean,
this.
let's just say it now. We're gonna spoil. This thing's been out now, I think, for a few weeks.
3 weeks.
So right,
yeah. we're gonna spoil the heck out of
we're
this.
gonna go into it.
yeah.
Yeah.
You were setting it up though. You were saying Reef is learning about the Nameless, doing research on the husk samples, talking to a new character, Amadeo Azazo.
Yeah, we've met him
Jedi
before.
We met him before at the
in one book.
Yeah, at the beginning of Phase 3. He just was introduced. I
in
think,
those
beginning
short
of Phase
stories.
3.
He's the one that went and got drunk with a bunch
Okay,
of teenagers on Coruscant for a night,
Mhm.
and almost
That's right.
left the order, and then was like, nah. And we've seen him in other
You're
stuff
absolutely right.
too. I think I
Yeah.
actually.
But new character in the novel.
He was
sort of
he was in
series.
one of the books.
Yeah, he was in the previous book. of this, I think.
Yeah,
he
I believe
introduced.
so.
Yeah.
He's probably on Star.
Oh, and I think
Yeah.
I remember him in Iridu, at some point. Yeah. Yeah. So he's cool. Amadeo Azazo, great name, and his master is Mira Lox.
Yep.
Yes.
And
That's.
yeah,
We'll talk. That's again. We just sort of.
Yeah.
By the way,
gestured as to
spoiler.
this
they're the
If
best
you
friends that
are-
ever were.
If you're a Padawan with a master during this period, that master gonna die.
Oh my gosh, yeah,
That they're not making it out of this. Like,
Yeah.
they kill him left and right. Yeah.
yeah. They're all gonna go. Speaking of masters, we have Reith Silas's former master left the order, so he didn't die. Comac Vitus.
Yes.
Who?
Yeah.
Not my favorite Jedi.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? You didn't like Comac in this book?
I have notes for Comac. He's not the strongest Jedi in the world, and he listens.
I love Comac.
Okay.
I think it's an incredible.
I think he's a great.
And so, like,
he's a great character, but he's not like in Galaxy. Like,
what do you mean in terms of good Jedi? Like, what does that mean?
well, he listens to his negative thoughts, and he puts more
Yeah.
weight in his negative thoughts than he does in the truth and that of who he is, which is a very good Jedi and a very good person. But like,
Right. I mean,
and so
that's
yeah. So essentially, he's a
Yeah.
coward. Like it manifests itself in him thinking that he's a coward and people thinking he's a coward, but he's just like listening to intrusive thoughts and taking them too seriously and thinking about, so he's a flawed character, and that's great, but maybe it's a little too close to home. So I'm like, I don't know. I don't judge this guy.
I love your breakdown.
yeah, but I mean, I
thought it
don't
was
disagree.
incredibly complex and interesting.
Oh, he is.
Yeah, I don't disagree. He is, and I don't disagree with either of you. You, Ben, I mean, by definition, he's a bad Jedi because he left the Jedi Order, right? Like,
Yeah.
like that doesn't mean he's a bad person, and he is his own and only worst enemy. Like,
Yeah.
like he is the impediment,
Yes.
in which I love that for a character because
love it.
as a person who suffers from, I'm not good enough syndrome.
Yeah.
Itis. I'm not good enough itis, where I'm like, I feel like a fraud wherever I actually succeed. I'm like, I don't know how I got here. It must be just dumb luck and fraud, right? Like, I see myself. I want to be Reith. I feel like I'd be Comac. I feel like I
Yeah,
would totally
no,
talk myself
I
out
totally
He was
of
the
would
most
be Comac,
relatable sort of
Yeah.
Jedi. Like,
Yeah.
can't jump the chasm. That was like we go to these flashbacks with Comac where he just cannot jump this
know.
canyon with Orla Jareni and oh god, what is it, Master like Sinox or what? I forget that character's name.
Sinox is
Very
really close.
cool name. I was like, this
Yeah.
this name is awesome. And then that character just gives some really fun advice about him just being, again,
Yeah.
like what Adam's saying, his enemy essentially. His only challenge is himself.
Do you think he makes it out alive, right?
Yeah.
Am I correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
he lives.
Yes,
And
yes,
the
yes.
other thing I hate about him is, and this is because it's something that I would hate about
This
myself, is
wild.
like
Like,
he quit
when
the
he gets
Jedi
his
Order
saber
but
back,
kept
that
being a
was
Jedi.
Ben moment.
Right,
When
exactly. He does. He's
Yeah.
he's a better Jedi when he's not a Jedi.
Yeah, it's like
than when
the
he's a Jedi.
pressure of being called a Jedi
Yeah.
is like, and I'm like, I relate to that so much, and
Do
I'm
you
just
hate
like,
him because he reminds you of you?
yes,
Is that what's
exactly.
going on? Okay,
Yeah.
because I get it, because I feel the same way.
Yeah.
Like I spent
Really?
the entire book judging him, and I'm like, oh man, do I relate so hard?
Yeah,
And
I'm like, oh,
and-
my
Yeah,
worst self
I-
would totally do
I-
that.
Right? I
When
wonder.
Reith gives him the lightsaber back, that wasn't like the moment for you where you were like,
Oh,
his old lightsaber.
well,
like,
so that's the thing. It's
he's back. Like,
right. That's the
let's go.
inherent tension. Is like you just be like, Comac, just put the stupid robes back on and get back in the game. And he's like, and they just like, and it's cool. Like for the story, you constantly feel that tension. So like when he gets his lightsaber back from Reath, he's like, oh, I've got it. I've kept it in my robes this whole time. You want to be like, yeah, he's back, and he does do Jedi awesome things. But it's like, no, just be a Jedi, dude.
Just be a Jedi. But do you?
Well, they had to do trauma with someone. I'm just like they have to do trauma with like all that's happened with the Valo and Starlight. It's like. They have to explore the trauma.
And it's an interesting way to explore it, because we've only seen Jedi leave the Order because they've fallen, right? Like into the dark side. And this is someone who has not fallen. He's still very much of the light. He just doesn't believe in himself or the Jedi very much.
I think he does believe in the Jedi. He just doesn't think he's good enough for them.
I don't think he believes, but he's talked about the fact that the Jedi...
Wait, so Ben, what if he's supposed to do all that he's supposed to do to keep Reath Silas in the light, and you're not thinking about the grand picture of the Force, essentially, and sort of what the Force should be setting up? Because he has all these lines in the book, like, we're exactly where we need to be.
Exactly. And
he says, Comac says these lines.
Listen,
he's still following the will of the
excellent,
Force.
It's excellent writing. It's an excellent book. It's an excellent character. I'm just telling you, it gives me the scum tangles because I'm like, oh, because I'm just like,
this is me as a Jedi. I don't like.
But I think you're right, and I love that. I love nothing more than a character that cannot deny is well constructed, well written, and well conceived, and I hate. Right. Like I love that. It's one of my favorite things.
Yeah. No. It's because like it's like watching yourself make all these bad decisions you've made in the past, and you can't make them not do the same mistakes.
Yeah.
You know, and you're just like, no, just do this. And you can't do it because you're just like reading this character and you're watching him go down this path.
I thought his temple escape from the Jedi Hunter was like the most riveting chapter.
So good.
Of the entire book.
Yeah.
So that was I was on the edge of my seat, man. I was
I was like speed reading through that. I was just like, I swear skipping like every other word because I was like, I gotta get to the end of this. This is stressing me out. But I wonder if what we haven't seen in Star Wars is we've seen people leave the Order, right? We haven't seen anyone rejoin the Order, right? So I wonder if that's the story we're getting, is that there is a way back. This isn't like a sect where like once you leave, you're out. And I hope that's book 3. I hope we don't get, which I'm afraid we're gonna get, a grand sacrifice. We've had a lot. And I would say enough grand sacrifices that we need a redemption arc within the Jedi. We haven't seen that. We've seen like people turn back to the light right before they die. But this is someone who turns back to not even turns back to the light, because he's of the light, but comes back to the Order and is accepted back into the Order. Yeah. And the nice thing would be for the council to be like, no, you were always a Jedi. You may have left the Jedi. We didn't leave you. We always knew you were a Jedi. Like here's your robes. The robes don't make you a Jedi. You've been a Jedi this entire time. Would be like a nice message.
Yeah. So that's.
I think that these books are going to say that the Jedi always need someone who's like one foot in the dark side to quell things like the Nameless and the Blight. And that's why you have a Vernestra Rowe on the council. And that's why you have a Mace Windu on the council. You need, and they might even get a title that's sort of like, I don't know, not gatekeeper, but I don't know what it could be, but it's like essentially a title.
Jedi?
It's like Sentinel. It could be something that's just like they go out and take out threats that can only be dealt with the dark side, essentially. And the Jedi need to build that into the Order, essentially, because that's what this book, I thought the direction of this book was going to be that Reath was going to use the dark side and just find that basically the Nameless won't attack him. And the Nameless actually, we'll talk about it. We will talk about it, actually, because when the Nameless do go after him, they keep getting sidetracked and eating like other things. And I'm like, why are they not just going right after Reath? Like, I don't get that. And then I'm like, oh, he must be dark side. And it's just hinted at. Even the Jedi Hunter calls him the broken Jedi. And that his blood is the tastiest, essentially. And I cannot wait to talk about this Jedi Hunter with you guys because.
Yeah. Do you want to do it?
Let's do it. He's the next. No. We've talked about Comac. We've talked about Reese. We've talked about Aslan Rel. A little bit of Miro Lox and Amadeo Zaza. But like, it's time to talk about our primary point of view antagonist. And I don't have his name here. It's Sikaru or something?
Oh, Sikaris?
Sikaris.
Yeah.
Sikaris was just. He's a Baron Bulin.
Baron Bulan's one of his many children.
Yeah, one of his projects.
And the children all took the 9th door. There's all this like really cryptic, interesting stuff about how he's made in this lab, and his brothers and sisters took this 9th door or something.
No, it's the Order of the 9th Door, and I think that's a callback to Phase 2. the Order of the Ninth Door was mentioned in
You're
the
absolutely
in the
right.
Jeddah.
It's like in the Path of the Open Hand. Kind of
Yes.
met with these people who are like, we're the brother, we're the whatever brother.
Remember
of the
they
Ninth
had
Door
that
or something.
summit on Jeddah.
right.
I think
The Convocation of the Force. I remember.
Yeah, Convocation of the Force. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yep.
And they had, I think, the Brotherhood of the Ninth Door was there, and
they were there.
and so. Yeah, I've got some procedural stuff. Maybe I'll wait till the end to
There's
ask.
some lore drops in this
Yeah,
book
'cause,
that
like,
are just gonna take us 15
Did we
minutes
meet
to talk about.
Aslan Rel in Phase 2? Because he was there. He was like in.
Yeah,
he was in the.
We see
path.
flashbacks of Aslan,
But I don't remember
when he's
his
young.
character when I was reading Phase 2. Like he was, I think, part of the Path of the Open
No,
Hand.
he's not in a lot of the novels. No, he's not there.
Okay.
Until
Which
But he
is
knows
very-
everything that happened.
Yes.
I'm trying Wikipedia as fast as possible, but we all know how Wikipedia is
You know, a little.
bad. But I will say, like, I feel I agree. I don't think he's there very much, which is weird to me, because like I feel like he's such a huge character in this entire Phase 3 that you think they would have threaded him at least a little bit in Phase 2. So I'm
Yeah.
trying to click on his Wikipedia to see his appearances.
So I will say there was a very obvious Phase 2 quote here. Like records of mysterious death, Jedi who died in strange or perplexing circumstances, but whose deaths were not attributed to the Nameless because at the time they were not understood for what they truly were. Jedi such as Zala Makri and Kevmo Zink.
Kevmo!
A Kevmo Zink reference,
A
which
Kevmo call out.
I am always here for. Poor Kevmo.
Also,
Gizmo.
so I apologize, as I often do, because I am insane. I read 2 books at once. And so I was reading this, I was going back and forth between this and Beware the Nameless. But in this book, he gets the shield, right? He gets what's her name's
Salandra Show,
Solandra's shield. So there's
Yes.
another
and then
Phase 2.
who gave it to her Padawan Rupert Natani.
Yeah.
Who
Yes, the shield goes
and
back.
then it's unknown, and then a dealer, and then apparently, and I don't remember Comac buying this. I think that happened not on the page.
Yeah. So, okay, so
That's
I have
another
all of
Phase.
he bought it on Batu or something.
Because I think George
think
Mann
I
was like,
think
he
so.
was one of the major authors of Phase 2, so he's just like, no, I'm doing as many tie-ins as I can.
He was big into it. It's the way they built out their author core in this is kind of amazing. It's actually similar to the live action.
He called
where, like,
Kevin Scott his best friend.
right.
Okay, I
Well,
think they're
both,
doing something specifically too. I think
they're both
there's
very British.
Okay, there's something going on. There's definitely some interesting sort of behind the scenes collaboration happening with the nursery rhyme around the Sri Karai and sort of like the overarching narrative around the Nameless and sort of like how they're affecting the characters and maybe some of the folklore around the Nameless in particular. Because I think like in the isn't that in the comic book that Kevin Scott wrote?
Yeah.
Like the Emmerich Kafter, incredible, like Shadows of the, I don't know what it's called, something Shadows of the Galaxy or Shadows of the Nameless or something. It's
Yeah, that was a huge part of
really
the story.
cool
That
comic.
was like,
It was a huge part of the story. I'm like, oh, it's all reverberating in this stuff, and it's like it just feels like there's some sort of like tie-in or there's some deep collaboration around how the name and like the almost the knocking on the door in this book that keeps happening on like Aslan Rel's quarters in the Jedi.
that's how he
temple
communicates
Jedi
with the guard.
Isn't that in the nursery rhyme?
Oh, buddy, it's been a minute since I read that.
I got to go back and read all that stuff because I was like, is that part of it? And like, I thought the knocking on the door and all the Nameless, all that stuff was good. I thought that all that stuff was going to sort of have a rising action all together and sort of work into some sort of like nursery rhyme. Because like it just felt like some deep connections to stuff we read already, essentially.
Yeah, there was a whole nursery rhyme that was in that I don't remember. Breaking news: Aslan Rail is in the Phase 2 books, in Path of Deceit and Path of Vengeance. He's in there. He's like a secondary, tertiary character. He's just one of the Jedi that is like along with a lot of the other crew.
Yeah, because I remember. I mean, they just sort of glossed over it, but the ending of that whole phase of Phase 2, there were some that like embraced the dark to fight off the Nameless in that last scrum in the like thing, and I think he might have been one of the ones that did that.
Yeah, I weirdly like was so like, what are we doing with phase 2 at times?
Yeah.
And now I'm like, boy, I feel like I missed a ton. And I
Yeah.
read it all, but like it makes me want to go back. I really think when this is all said and done at some point, and when I have like time in my hands, so like, 10, 15 years, I'll go back and read. Like I do want to read. I want to read the phase 1. I want to read all of the adult novels,
Yeah.
like all the novels, all 9 of them, or I guess 8 of them in a row, right? And then
Yeah.
do all the other ones in a row, and then because I feel like there's so much stuff, it's hard for my brain to keep it all
Yeah.
organized.
I still think the story needs to elevate one level higher for me to like reread the whole thing, the whole series again. Like right now, it's like feels like I don't know, like is it doing anything beyond like the Hound of Baskerville and like I don't know, a sort of like disaster terror story? Like I'm hoping they get into the dark side and the Sith, like this whole Aslan Rel thing. I'm really hoping there's another layer to that that's actually gonna pop off in this final chapter, and you're gonna get this whole like, oh, this is why the resurgence of the Sith occurred essentially.
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
I
I almost
yeah.
want the Sith
that.
to be like, oh, they can be weakened. Like this is their fault.
Right,
Like
yeah,
this is
yeah,
what
yeah.
this
Some
is
big
what
learning almost. Yeah.
whoever is the Sith Lord learns. Like this is their like basically they're like acid testing the Jedi. Like this is their weakness, right?
You almost
and
need
learning.
that for the closer,
Yeah.
right? Like that's how you close.
And it's passed down, and
in the mind,
Palpatine takes these
Right.
learnings and realizes what the folly and weakness of the Jedi are.
Would you guys be disappointed if Aslan Rel was one of the 2 Sith existing during this time period?
I think I would be. I
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
'cause-
like him.
yeah.
I kind of like the idea of a noble Darksider in some ways.
Yeah.
Like I like the idea he's a utilitarian Darksider, right? Like I'm not doing this for galaxy conquest. I honestly believe in what I'm doing. I'm selling my soul for you.
Yeah.
Like there's kind of something really interesting in that story. Not that I think he's good, but that he believes in it, and it's not this like Palpatine, I want order, but really I just want to be the boss story things. Like, no, the Nameless are going to kill everyone. I sell my soul for all of you. You're welcome. I suffer for you. It's like this, the martyr syndrome is an interesting way to tell that story.
Yeah.
I just think it's an incredibly tough look for Yoda. at the end
Yeah.
of the day.
Yeah. Agree. Yeah. Same.
And so for
Yeah.
me, as being a massive Yoda fan, who's like maybe the last one in the room, I'm just like, no, people love Yoda.
No, I'm like,
and
what are you
what he
talking
means
about?
to the
I
history
everyone
of,
loves
of
Yoda.
cinema. But I'm saying,
No, you're not the last.
it's more
one
that
in-
like
you're not the
you
last
talk
one
to
in your room. You're the
you talk
biggest
to
one.
a modern Star Wars fan about Yoda. Like, let me know what the acid test on that is, because I'm always interested in people's thoughts on Yoda.
No, Yoda needs
But,
to be damn near perfect. Like to me, Yoda is the shining beacon of light in the whole thing.
Yeah, always.
Yeah, and it's just he brought Aslan there, and
I
like
know, that was a tough
Aslan
look.
killed all these people, and now they're like go in the basement and drink tea and stay away, and like we'll let just this one kid who has a proclivity to the dark side sort of come talk to you. Which I was like, what is this decision making?
Yeah.
But
And then
it works out, right? Like
Yeah.
like that's the thing is like Yoda.
and then
was
Yoda's
right.
like, capture a Nameless, we must. And I'm like, okay, so anyone who dies who went to go get a Nameless, like it's basically negative responsibility on Yoda. Like it's like
Well,
everything.
No, it's Yoda understanding that their like larger actions are needing, and
Yeah.
like this is
No.
it sucks. And as a pacifist, it's hard to say, but like there are sacrifices.
Yeah.
Sacrifices need to be made.
So can we come to the
unfortunately.
understanding that Yoda maybe just has to make incredibly tough
Yeah.
decisions? because he's
Sometimes
the
there's
head
no
of the
perfect
council?
decision. There's no decision where
Yeah,
everyone
there we go.
lives.
And who
And that's
better
hard
to
to say.
take the long view than a person who's 600 years old? You know, like,
Yeah.
So use a clone army was one of those decisions. At one point.
well, I think that was all forced
Well,
on him. That it just
It wasn't
happened.
for
Yeah, I
it was
think
for
it was
the
forced on- I think it was
shadow. The
forced
dark
on
side
too.
was clouding,
I agree.
right at this
I think,
point.
I think the Senate was like, we have like, what you have, you have Count Dooku and the separatist regime all in this Coliseum on this planet. We have to attack. There's droid
Yeah.
manufacturers
And they
everywhere.
wanted to save Obi-Wan and Anakin and Padme.
Yeah.
You know, I think they were just like, it was there. It was they didn't.
All right,
they
I'm
were-
glad we did Yoda defense
You're
corner
also
because
They didn't
not
have
to
a
get
choice.
not to
Yeah.
get like too behind the scenesy, but you're writing a prequel. It's really hard. It's really hard to make Yoda a hero in a time period where the Jedi
They lose,
have to
yeah.
fail
Yeah.
because of the way the plots are. But I think they do. I think George wonderfully does as best of a job
Yeah.
he can with making Yoda come out fairly golden. That whole thing.
Now that I'm thinking
Um,
about it, it was really deft, like storytelling to explain it, like the situation with the, the pit there on Geonosis, like what am I trying to? The gladiatorial arena is what I was trying to say.
The Petronaki
arena.
Yeah.
That was like actually really like it was a rock and a hard place for Yoda. He had no choice. He was just like, all right, let's go.
Yeah.
I just think I'm glad we did this because I'm glad we have this podcast, guys, because this is
Me
huge
too.
for me. I need the sort of Yoda pep talk sometimes.
I don't know how
I hear things.
big of a Star Wars fan I would continue to be if it wasn't for this podcast. And I don't mean that negatively. Does that make sense? But this podcast allows me to work out a lot of things.
Yeah.
That if I was by myself, I might be ruminating on and like not being positive about. I want to say on that note, here are a couple of critiques I have for this. Wait,
is this Council Corner? Are we doing Council Corner?
Not yet. I want to come back around to this, but and this is not horrible. But so, one of the main missions of this book was to bring back a Nameless, right? And as you mentioned, a lot of people die in this mission.
Yeah.
Have you read Jurassic Park?
Well, you all didn't read Beware the Nameless, not to call you out. I did.
Oh yeah, no, we didn't.
We
The
did.
junior novel, which was fun. There's a Hutt character as the main character, a young Huttling,
I'm reading that.
which is pretty wonderful. His journey is pretty great.
Glad you led with that.
That's pretty good. I won't spoil it for anyone if they want to read it. It's actually pretty nice. It's good.
Is it a Jedi
You know,
Huttling?
No.
Are there stubby
I
little
was
arms and a
I was literally
lightsaber?
wondering as I was reading this.
That
I'm
will
like,
break the internet.
But he is someone who doesn't necessarily like buy into the extreme capitalism of Hutts,
Oh,
right?
okay.
But also wants to. He's stuck between his family and the new
Typical.
family he finds. It's that very much a kid's story, right?
Is
Like,
this
he's-
the bass player from that Star Wars Visions animation?
Oh no, no. He's more of a botanist nerd.
Okay.
But I will say this: that at the end, they are also Ram Jamaram is like, I'm gonna go capture Nameless, and he gets
3.
he brings 3 back, and yes, there is some death, but minimal. And so I get to the end of this Tears of the Nameless, and I'm like, oh man, you
It's
wasted your
rigorous. It was very
time.
difficult.
What were you? It was such a
I
weird
know,
writing
I-
moment.
Well,
Yeah.
no, this book was brilliant though.
But, like,
I'm glad
no,
I did not read
it
that.
really
book.
They were
read
like-
as
This
like,
book is like it makes it so hard to
Yeah.
capture a Nameless, and it's
They said it in a
terrifying.
line. It was like, Wreath, this is so great that you brought this back. Together with this one, together with the 3 that Ram Jamaram brought back, are really going to help us. Like, if you were Wreath, wouldn't
Yeah,
you just
it's a real
like
punch in
walk
the
into
gut.
the ocean and not come out?
I know it. I laughed so hard when I got to that point because I'm like, this book is kind of pointless. It is really funny. It's one of those things where I'm like, I don't know if like they were all paying attention to what the other book was doing, or if it was just an inside joke or something. But it made me laugh so hard. The other critique
is
I
funny.
have about Tears of the Nameless is so basically their big discovery is, hey, you know those staffs that
That he keeps waving around and doing all
we
this
were
stuff
I
with?
reading it.
don't need
I-
to use to
This-
control
oh,
it. We need to get those so we can control the
Yeah.
Nameless. And I was like, and I'm gonna swear here, you can blank it or not. I was like, no shit, Sherlock. When I was reading this book, I kind of got annoyed that was the big revelation.
Wait, do you remember how we all our previous pods were like this? We really hope this book has some answers about the Nameless and sort of what's going on and how we can stop
Yeah.
Martian Row and the Blight and the
Yeah.
Nameless
Yeah.
all together. I would still say we're still trying to search for those answers at the end of this book, which is a little
They got
tough.
them.
Like,
The
as a
answer's just
reader.
not satisfying.
This is the
It's
conversation I
obvious.
had with myself
Well, it's like
today.
the Echo Stones. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
we know
But-
it's the Hound of Baskerville and you control it with the whistle or whatever, but it's like, I
Yeah.
just don't understand what's happening
So
here.
Ben, you said you had this conversation with yourself, and you ended up kind of okay. So
I ended
walk
up.
us through the conversation you had.
Well, because
Yeah.
I started just what Grant just said. I was just like, do we really know anything about the Nameless? But I'm like, we kind of do now. We do. Like, they were docile creatures living on this planet we've seen many times that's just lush in the Force, and they can just feed on the grass, and that's enough Force energy for them to live. They were They were out on a grand like mission, right? They were collected by a very strong, and maybe a little hubristic. The Ptolemites, which we should talk about.
New
Ptolemites
civilization
a lot,
in Star
but-
Wars. Very cool.
Yeah, an ancient civilization that might be mentioned by Mangold, maybe not. And it was just like they just went on a journey to like collect some things and bring them back, probably to honor themselves. And whoops, one of the things they brought back feeds on the Force, and it turns into a weapon, and then it goes out of control, and somehow spawns the Blight, which we haven't really talked about much. But they are connected in their own way. So
A macro, micro.
yeah.
thing.
So and it's like, and then we did learn how they were brought back.
Yeah.
I just like I wanted there to be a sort of it is a devastating backstory, really. Like these
You
animals
you actually feel sympathy for the Nameless for the first time in this whole thing. I feel like,
especially
towards the end of it.
we still haven't really talked about Sikaris.
No, we haven't
Sikaris,
talked about a
yeah.
major thing about him. In fact,
Yeah,
No.
but yes, he does so he he's a Jedi hunter. He uses Nameless and these augmented Baron Voolan.
He hunts alongside his
he's
nameless
also
brothers.
like
Injected
he's
he's a Force user injected
Force
with
user.
Nameless blood,
Yeah.
which I would think would kill you
Yeah.
instantly.
so cool. I was like, start here. I wish this whole series started.
I
here.
know. I'm like, who?
Crazy
This is amazing. Like,
Frankenstein's
yeah.
character.
It was.
So-
It's terrifying the way it's written from his perspective. I'm gendering him. I can't remember.
I think he's a
if
him.
actually-
He's a he.
I think it's a him. I think he's he.
Yeah.
But like, it is a scary thing.
Yeah, he's very Gollum-like.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very common.
And there was another I was like, he's Gollum and it'll come to me later.
Oh. Yeah.
There's
Can we talk about
Nosferatu,
Grand
or
Elf?
like,
Yeah.
After we're done recording, we can turn off the thing and we can talk about Grand Elf. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah.
Gandalf.
Sorry, just came to me.
The Grand Elf.
Yeah.
Grand Elf.
yeah.
I think that was supposed to trigger his memory, not to be a literal manifest. Okay.
No, I know. Yeah.
This isn't going to be
Oh,
Rings of Power corner.
yeah. Rings of Power is our bonus episode. Just like, subscribe, follow the pod.
Yeah.
Cantina Chronicles.
Right.
it,
If we get 1,000
Rings of Power
followers, we will
Chronicles.
start the Rings of Power podcast.
Yeah, actually, we will do a full-on Tolkien series.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm on board now. I've read them all,
If
except
we
I still have
get
to
a million
some early.
subscribers.
But,
The Silmarillion's short. I just bought it on Kindle.
We'll painstakingly go through every detail, and we'll compare it to what the Rings of Power did, and then we'll say why this is.
I love
This
it.
shouldn't be
I love
taking
it. I
place.
enjoy it.
It
fun.
scratches an itch every week, and then
Yeah.
and then I scratch it to the point where
okay,
it bleeds.
I'm not negative on the show. I love the
No,
show. I'm a
it's
Tolkien
not.
guy.
It's just
I do love the show.
It's a prequel. It's a prequel. Prequels have issues that are always
it's
present.
It's totally going in all types.
Everything
of
has to
directions.
be something.
Yeah. I just get to do the thing, and I'm like, is that
know.
what Galadriel will
Look
do?
great.
I don't
like,
care.
Do elves? Do we gotta do the elves like this? That's all I'm gonna say.
All right. Well, so back to
And it's-
Sikaris.
Towards the end of the season, they came around a bit. They got very elf-like at the end. They took some L's, but
Did they?
I think so. They took a lot of L's. They took a lot of L's.
All right.
Sikaris?
I love it.
Incredibly
That,
tough
like
for
it's
my
not going to
elves
be a Rings
taking
of Power
L's.
quarter, and then
Elves taking elves. T-shirts. Print them. Let's go.
Sorry, all I had to say was Grand Elf. That's all I had to say.
Oh, gosh. Sikaris.
Elves, man.
Yeah,
Hey,
so-
by the way, you told me he couldn't be Grand Elf the first season. I told you it's Grand Elf. You're like, no, it's not. It can't be for these reasons. And by the way, I was right. Moving on.
Well, Gandalf's
We all knew it was
Gandalf's name is a literal translation
I know.
of Great Elf.
I know. I was trying to avoid this call him
Or whatever.
Gandalf, but
Yeah.
I'm like, it's Gandalf. And you're like, no, it's not.
yeah.
I'm like, yeah, he is. Anyway, moving on. I was right. You're
How could it not? How could it not be Gandalf at that point? He says, "Follow your nose" in the first season.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
thought it was, Gandalf from the
Like,
first
game
season.
over.
I feel like I'm being gaslit. Anyway, moving on.
Saruman. That'd be a wild twist. I have so
Right?
much respect for the show. If it was
I
like,
would
how
have.
Yeah,
That
about
would have been.
that's
I would have
Sauron.
loved that. I would have loved that move.
They were
Yeah.
teasing it.
Yeah.
No.
Sorry, Force user, Jedi Hunter. Moving back.
Sikaris, yeah, he's a Force
yeah.
user. He's
Yeah.
so I did.
Uses an electro
I
staff.
have to say, like
Pale.
Baron Voolan, real quick. Like,
Yeah.
he's never done much for me, and it was a little bit tempered by the fact that in the comic book series we just read, he was captured.
Yes.
So he
it's,
is
It's a
now-
weird
Oh, yeah.
timeline jump.
Yeah, we sort
Yeah.
of jumped back after reading the comics that came out before this book, I guess, or simultaneous. I don't know, but yeah. But anyways, he's a project. It's just these experiments that are mostly being done. All these poor Nameless are being like
He's
experimented
like a
on.
cartoonish mad scientist in the comic books,
Yeah.
but in this, he's like
Terrifying.
he's incredibly dark and terrifying. Yeah.
So you said he didn't do much for you. Correct me if I'm wrong. He's a what's
Ithorian.
it called? Ithorian. Does he? I can't remember, and I'm actually asking this because I don't know if it's like a Mandela effect or create in my brain. Doesn't he have like basically a monocle?
He does. He has like
does.
a
Okay.
cybernetic
Yeah.
monocle. Yeah.
That's what I thought. That's why he's the best
Spotted,
Star Wars
yeah.
character ever.
Oh no, the design is fantastic, but it just like his like character
he's a
development
great
was a little bit of like mustache twirling, sort of like silly caricature villain. But like
Yeah,
now it was real. Like now you're like, oh, this is really gross what this guy's doing. Like George Mann.
And he
brought
like
that home.
abuses.
It
his
definitely gave him
subjects,
some
too.
depth. in that,
Yeah,
which
he
I
says
appreciate. But
he said he would punch, like the Jedi Hunter was like, I don't want to go back because father will punch me in like the stomach or something. And I was like, jeez,
I know.
like Bulin's evil.
It made me really.
Ithorian just punches you right in the gut. Like that is.
Flicking eye.
I don't know. I'm always agreed. I was on board from day one because anytime you give me mad scientist, I'm like, yep, please.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love
cool
that this book
character.
gave him depth above just being mad scientist. Insert mad scientist
here
vibe here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
So, anyways, so Sickers, we've got we're in his head. It's very Gollum-like stuff. He like. It's like this blood, the like nameless blood he has in his system makes him a different person, or it's like liquid dark side, or something.
I want to talk about that because he's essentially like he has lost the taste for food. He now just, I think, wants to devour force energy.
Yeah,
and devour power.
I think
only
that's why
craving
he's
is
force
power,
essentially.
Yeah. But he's like, I think he's gone dark side. Like maybe it was light before, but now he's like completely consumed with the dark side. And
he has to keep taking these injections to just to live, right?
Well, to keep this power over the Nameless and to keep that sort of dark side rush going is what was my interpretation of it. Like, if not, he like gets itchy and whatever, and it's like a drug. But I think he would just go back to being a normal person.
Yeah, he's like a bloodlust character.
Yeah.
It's just terrifying. You're like, oh my god, he's hunting Jedi, and he's just as crazy as the Hounds running alongside.
Crazier. Cool, he's less human than the Hounds. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, I would way rather get attacked by a Nameless than that guy with his electro staff. Just flailing around.
I will. So is it? So I don't want to bring it back to Beware the Nameless, but is it in this book, or Beware the Nameless, where one of the Nameless actually devours a non-Force user?
Yeah, it's in this book. One of the Nameless eats its own.
Right?
Cannibalizes.
Yes, and in Beware the Nameless, it does eat
a person. That was a phase. So in phase 2, it actually. I think it was phase 2. It attacks and kills a civilian.
It does as well. Okay, so we're starting to establish that they don't have to eat because the Force is everything. They just prefer Force users because it is like the most.
Yeah, I feel like they like physically digested a human though, like not like Force
husked, not husked,
not
as
husked.
They call it in this. Yeah. The other thing I'll say in Beware,
they should have never been taken from their ecosystem. That's what this book. Yeah. That's all this book is saying.
Yeah,
it's like, they should never have been removed from their ecosystem.
Right. Which is what we get, right? Like we get in phase 1. Is it phase? Yeah, it's phase 1. We get Marchion Ro, right, going back to Planet X or whatever it's called, right?
Oh, you're right. It is actually called Planet X. I think it has a real name now, but it was for a long time Planet X. Yeah.
No, I think they were hiding it though, isn't that because? Because we know they were taken from a planet that was abundant, like beautiful.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Planet where Martian Road got them was not actually.
They're kind of not sharing what that name of that planet is.
Yeah.
I think might be where they were did hear it because there was a bunch of it. I think it was at the end of phase 2 because they go to that planet like a few times, and they get chased and all that. That they actually have a name for it, but maybe it's just Planet X, man. But it's hidden by a nebula, and you kind of need a path engine to get in there. Like that was where the path engine was invented, was leaving that nebula by accident.
Yeah.
This ringing any bells for you guys?
Are the ever any? Are they have force powers at all?
Well, they're the ones they can talk to the dead, right?
I kind of feel like they do.
I think they're connected somehow. Like they're in the same system as maybe that world where the Nameless are from.
Maybe there might be. I wouldn't be surprised if they make a connection. By the way, this just in Bulin was actually in phase 2. He was one of the littles in the Path of the Open Hand cult.
Oh, that's right.
No kidding.
So, yeah. So he was one of the this is why Star Wars is great. Like it's one of those things where it's like he's just some little kid running around in phase 2. Much like Greedo's cutout scene from episode 1. So I was going to say that also in Beware the Nameless, one of the things I appreciate is that the reason why they're able to bring 3 Nameless back is because they go with a big group of RDC people, and basically throughout the book, when the Nameless start coming, do you know what the non-Force users do? They tell the Force users to get behind them and fight the Nameless. Yeah. And I'm like,
that was my favorite moment of this book was when Amadea was about to die. And like RDC people like pull him out. I was just like, this is awesome. I was like, finally. I was like, it's like the the reader could breathe for the first time. I was just like, oh, I can finally
Right.
just
I've been waiting
take
for
a
that for like
breath,
2 years.
hang out. I know.
And in both these books, I like the fact that it's not easy. Like even the non-force users have a time killing these things. They're not like weaklings. Like they're strong monsters.
Yeah, it's like
but
I think like
there's,
blasters like deflect off their skin or
Yeah,
something. Like
yeah.
it's a tough row to hoe.
Sure.
Woof. And that brings us to the death of Comac fight. Oh no, Miralox.
Miralox.
Yeah, which was
So this is long after they kind of learned they have the council meeting, and I want to do my quick council meeting notes.
Oh, you want to do council corner?
Yeah,
you've been teasing this.
Just quick.
Let's do it.
I will get us.
No,
right
take
back
your time with council corner.
Do it. This is a
no.
good...
My other expediting Padawan training.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Full Jedi.
The Guardian protocols.
It's such a bad decision.
Bad.
It's like
choice.
You're just throwing, meat into the grinder. It's like, don't do that. What are we doing? Why would you do that?
Why? Like, why does that? How does that not?
Yeah.
Like, why? Like, how does that not violate what you're doing? Like, what's the point then?
I think part of that was just accelerating their lightsaber training and like getting real lightsabers in their hands. I think to defend themselves, because they're like, we don't know.
But they do like a consolidation order on Coruscant, where they're like, everyone get over here. Let's all just hunker down.
Right.
And I'm like, why are you then expediting Padawan?
I think they need more fighters, and they're like, you know what, we haven't been like focusing on fighting as like a main thing, but they didn't say that. Like, I'm not.
Wouldn't you just do like diplomacy with the RDC to get more RDC support?
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, wouldn't you just make that
You
be the
should.
move, essentially?
Yes. Yeah, we did a whole podcast on sort of breaking down these orders.
That was just wild. And again, my final note was like leaning on the RDC this late in all that's happened.
Yeah.
It
It's
just
just
shows
like we're now leaning on them.
hubris.
Like
it's hubris, right? Like
Yes,
it's just
it does.
it's
It really
the
illustrates
fault
that
of the
stubbornness.
Jedi. It's like trust not. They do not. They. I mean, here's the thing. Oh, I'm gonna say something that maybe this is gonna lead us
They
down
also
a long
can't
thing.
be dark side at all. They can't entertain the idea of being the dark side.
Well,
which
that's
is, I think that's the learning for the Sith in these books. Hopefully, is that they're like, oh, they're so stubborn in the light that they won't even learn about the dark. They will just put their temple, they'll build their temples atop it, and will bury it in the basement.
Yeah.
They will not face it.
I think the Jedis have a superiority complex.
Oh, 100%. I think certain ones do.
Not every single one, but as an organization. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd probably go with Grant's, But yes, like on a whole, like as an organization, they've followed down a path.
We know what's best.
And they're and they are trapped right now by their own vanity, really.
I don't know. Keeping peace for 1,000 years is I think a noble deed.
I'm not saying they're not noble, right? We're not saying that. It's just like It's just like
you're saying the nobility almost creates this superiority, where it's like a moral superiority as well, and everyone's just less than in terms because they don't have these moral obligations.
But if they weren't so prideful, they would just be like, okay, get what's his name in here to clean out the blight in our basement, or they'd be like, it's fine, RDC. Hey, can you guys lend us a hand on this one?
We need your help.
Right,
like
that. Like those are signs
going to it out of desperation. Here's the thing:
they're trapped by their own sort of vanity.
That's the problem, is they're not wrong. I think the Jedi are superior in a lot of ways. I don't like that word that I put it out there, but like they do, like they've done their job for this long. The problem is they buy into their own. They now don't question it because they've been doing it for so long, and I think that's the folly of it at times. And like I don't want to do this because, as we talked about in this podcast, like the failings of the Jedi sometimes get focused on too much, that you get to this weird thing of just like, so then why are we like, what are we doing now? Like,
what is this space? Is this space fantasy even a fantasy anymore?
Right. Like
let's drill down on political messaging.
It's okay
about,
to have the heroes be heroes.
Failure of massive institutions that are.
So I don't want to like feed into that, but I feel like this, similar to as we talking about not the failings, but the issues of the Lord of the Rings, not to bring it back to there, but like anytime you tell a prequel, you're bound by what happened after you. This is now a prequel of a prequel, right? So it is somewhat bound into trying to explain the Jedi we see at the beginning of the prequels that then lead into like, so it's a thing.
I mean, there's another 300 years to go or whatever, no, 150 years, I guess.
150, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But yeah, so that's pretty soon.
Yeah. Anyways, that's it for Council Corner. But I did want to just jump into the whole like Ptolemite research.
Yeah.
What Ptolus is, that planet, sort of that quest. I think it's the Invictus and the Orchid. That's when part 2 opens up in the book. We were sent on these missions, right? The Orchid is going to is the Orchid going to Angoth, where the Nile base is, where they're going to try and extract a Nameless, and then the other one is going to Ptolus, where the Ptolemites are, this ancient civilization where Comac and Reith are going to investigate these ruins, or this sort of reliquary repository for the three ancients. Is that what they're called? The three ancients.
Are they
characters?
ancients?
These like mummies.
Right.
They're like pharaonic sort of. Like,
yeah, but they had
characters.
like a triarch leadership. The Ptolemaites, and I think they were called the three ancients. I think is right.
Three ancients.
Sounds right. I was trying to.
Let's
think
go
of
with that. Sorry, George, if we fucked that up.
Anyways, the Angoth stuff, where then they attack that Nile outpost, and that's where Mira Lox dies. That's where we were, right back where we were. That's where that scene. Oh man, that's probably that was the toughest scene I think I read in the entire book, where I was just like, I need to like put the book down, walk away from the book. Like,
yeah. Hello, darkness, my old friend.
It was the chapter I read. Like I have a very like I have to be like the book has to go down at X time at night when I'm in bed so I can like fall asleep. Like my life is now. I live and die by knowing the fact that I have to wake up at 7:20 every morning, no matter what. And so, like, I got to that I started that chapter right where I'm like, okay, this is the last chapter I can read before I have to go to bed. And I'm just like, ugh.
Woof.
All right, I guess I'll read another chapter because I'm like, I can't leave it there or else I'm not going to sleep well tonight. Like, because literally it was just in my, like, it was described so well I could picture it. You know what I mean? Like, I could see it. Like, ugh. Yeah. It was just like, I loved it. Yeah, it was great.
And like they're the RDC members, and Amadea are like walking closer to her, and
frozen face,
not moving.
One eye moving.
One eye
as
tries
they
to look at him, and
oh, it's so good.
And as he's turning around trying to look at his Padawan, who they love. They are the best friends that have ever been, by the way. That is like Padawan,
the way they fight,
and Master,
like perfect. Synergy.
They have like Cirque du Soleil like fighting moves. They're like they are best friends.
I was talking to this with Ben, and I were talking about this before the show. We were just like, man, people love some of the Kylo Ren stuff in the sequel trilogy, but like some of the stuff described in this book, where like they are working out these again, like you're talking about, this balletic sort of like, let me throw you into a group of people, and then you'll just lash out with your lightsaber, and you're basically like a rolling ball of death. Yeah, and I can like throw you at people. I was like,
that'd be awesome.
This is this needs to be in live action soon. Like, we need to have Jedi working together, throwing each other, like across rooms, or like projecting each other with the Force at other people. Like the choreography that sort of you get with the Amadea and Locke's characters were, I don't know, it was just so cool. I was like, this is awesome. And they're going to do the move they did in the training earlier in the book, and there's all this setup payoff.
Yeah, they had to like kill a dragon.
I just applaud George Mann for all like the little setup and payoffs that are in this book.
So many.
Sort of the foreshadowing, the brilliant foreshadowing. Like I think that Zeltron Jedi in the beginning of the book, he's like drinks a cup of water in the beginning of the book. And like the planet that is like the secreted planet that is hidden that they're trying to find throughout the entire book is a drowned world, a world just enveloped by water. And I was just like, that's deep. Like it's just some of the foreshadowing, like a lot of the Az and Rel stuff is like all foreshadowing. I was just everything was just so good.
I will say, maybe this is connected to what you're saying, maybe it's not. Just so everyone's aware, as public service announcement, leaks are starting to definitely drip out about the Mandalorian and Grogu.
Oh.
Okay, let's hear it right now, live on air.
I mean, do you want it live air? Ben,
yeah,
let's go.
It? Ben's the one that
I
want it.
Sure. At this point, it's so far away.
This book kind of goes like they lift the temple out of the water, which was the greatest thing I've ever read in my entire life, and then they have a vision.
So like, so being the person that like kind of does the Instagram and the people I follow, I tend to get like certain things spoiled. And to be fair, for the people who spoil things, they're very clear. Like, spoiler, don't swipe. What am I gonna do? Like, what am I going to do with that?
You could
right? Well, I think we're trying to get sold on this movie. I mean, like, I know a proper teaser and a proper trailer will come out eventually, but it's just like...
So...
Is it called The Mandalorian and Grogu, is it?
For now. So one of the things that came out is some things we've been talking about. It's like they're definitely talking about Luke being a part, if not a big part, of this film.
Okay.
And that
All right, I'm listening.
there are a lot of
Go on.
scenes in this movie with him and a young boy.
Who may or may not be Luke. No, wait.
Jason
Jason
Sindula?
Sindula, maybe.
Kylo. It's gonna be Ben.
Oh, Ben
And-
is pretty young. Oh.
And they do
Young Ben
and
Solo.
young Ben
Young
Solo,
Ben Solo
and
and-
part of what they want to do in this film, sorry, part of the thing that's being written about it is possibly showing Luke as like a good mentor, right?
Yeah.
Like of like similar to what we're talking about, of like escapades and like actually being fun and like
Before the wheels fall off. Yeah.
like doing this stuff, right? So
All right. Well, that's the
given
last
the back-
spoiler I
I
want to
don't
hear.
I don't want to go.
Lucasfilm backfill.
Can you
right?
imagine how? Yeah. See, I don't
We
want
have
to
to
know
go on another
anymore. I'm
mission.
gonna
I
forget
don't
that.
I
wanna
told you, Ben. I warned you. I said, "Do you want me to?" I will.
Yeah, and I've learned my
um,
lesson. That'll be my last spoiler. And
I also
Wait,
am
no, that's
still
not even
gonna
a spoiler,
resist
though.
swiping.
What are we
I
talking
know, but
about here? That's not even a
Can
spoiler.
you imagine seeing Luke?
That's
Can you
not
imagine
a
seeing
spoiler.
Ben Solo though on the big screen and having no idea what was going to happen? It'd be pretty cool.
Really?
Yeah,
To me, it's like
we have different brains,
don't-
Grant.
Yeah, I would
Okay,
say that if you
alright.
introduced, if you
For me, it's
introduced
like-
Luke at that time, it'd be like,
for me, it's like I'm.
wait for
You're in
Ben
the
Solo.
theater
Luke, not
as
so
a-
much,
as a-
but Ben
it's
Solo
not-
would be pretty
You're kind
stoked.
of like, I know where we are in the timeline, and these people are around, and you're just
Yeah,
thinking,
I
will
would
they
be
ever?
right.
A will they ever attitude comes
Yeah.
in mind when you watch a Star Wars. Where you're like, will they? Like, we're going here? Will they? You know what I mean? Like that's sort of. That's,
Are
that
they
was
going
the-
to do it? Are they going to
Yeah,
do
are
it?
they gonna do it? Is it gonna
And
happen?
They did.
Is it
Yeah.
gonna happen? Osis? Who else is on Osis right now? Ben Solo? Oh my! You know, what I mean, like,
This is
Right.
why Carly hates watching things with me. I have to keep my mouth shut.
right? Yeah, it's very
Keep
tough.
accidentally breaking slow horses for her. And she's
Yeah.
had about enough. Like I literally am on warning with her. She's like, if you do it one more time, we're not watching the show again together anymore.
Oh wow!
So,
Yeah, that's tough.
I mean,
that's
back to this reveal. Like, I can still
Yes.
have an idea that it's going to happen, but actually seeing it happen is really special for me. Like when that does actually like come through to fruition, even I'm like,
Yeah.
because it's like to me is like the same thing with Darth Plagueis in Acolyte. Like,
Yeah.
I knew
Yeah,
he was
yeah.
around, and I was like, wait, are you gonna do this right now? Are you gonna do
Same.
this right now?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
god, you just like. I will have that moment. It's like there's only so many possibilities. I'm rarely fully surprised, but it's like when I actually see one of the things that I thought might happen and come to fruition, I'm stoked.
Yeah, I would say even with these rumors, especially this far out of the game, I'm just like, I don't know the veracity of who said this. I don't know what they're looking
Right.
at. Even if they're looking at a script,
Sure.
they haven't shot it yet. Like
Yeah.
things change, and so even now, when it happens in 2 years, I will be able to think going, what? Like when it happens, I'll be like, that's
Yeah,
all, you know what I mean? Like my brain is enough to like not get.
I'm not gonna
credence
remember
to-
this in 2 years. I'm not gonna remember
Yeah,
this in
or
2
I'm like,
days.
who knows if it actually happened? I really start avoiding like I will go lights out on anything on the internet about 6 months out from from then. That's when I really start like not blacking out.
Yeah,
really
yeah.
not looking at stuff too closely.
That's what, but like to me, you just can't do that in the Mandalorian Grogu movie. That's just not where that story. To me, the story was actually supposed to be in the sequel trilogy, in my opinion. That was where that story was
100%.
supposed to be.
Yeah, yeah.
In my
But they're,
opinion, was
they're
like
doing the classic
the
Lucas
full
backfill.
Luke and Ben treatment. But
Yeah.
in a
Ben
saga,
Solo is kind of the sequel trilogy.
I'm saying just the development of the character,
Yeah.
the character development, early development of the characters could have been all in flashbacks
Oh,
or
yeah,
tastefuls,
yeah,
little
Yeah,
sequences.
100%.
But like to do it in in a movie called The Mandalorian Grogu just feels like a cheap backdoor way to explore
Why they got to change the
what
name?
I think's lore that's central to the saga films, which is also the whole like Luke meeting a creature that resembles Yoda is actually perfect for a side show or something like that, like some sort of show that's just sort of like, oh yeah, this is deep to Luke, but like not really to the overall arching
Right.
story of like how Snoke started to manipulate Kylo Ren, which is like you kind of want to see the flavor of Shakespearean opera that they do around Snoke and Kylo Ren, because you're like, you've seen this before with Palpatine and Anakin, but you just kind of want to know what flavor, how this occurred, and how could Luke let it occur, and like sort of like what were the beats there essentially. And for that to be in the Mandalorian Grogu just feels like weird to me.
I don't
It could
think-
just be like Ben just hanging with Luke, and that's
From
fine.
what Adam said, and we cut you off, Adam, I don't
Yeah.
think that's what this is
I
at
don't think
all. I think this is they're gonna like not think about the fall yet. Like the fall happens in like 10 years, like 15
Oh,
years.
100%.
So they're going to
No,
just
100%.
they're going to make this happy-go-lucky. This is when, it wasn't always all bad. Like they did get along. He was a great mentor.
No, I agree with that. I'm just saying I think you're still getting this sort of like Imperial Shadow Council storytelling occurring on the side as well. And so if you're saying there's Ben and Luke and then your Imperial Shadow Council, I think they have to start
Snoke teasing.
start seeding the whole like, oh, Snoke's just this weird guy who hangs out on a Maxine station and Ben and Luke are still best friends or something. But it's like almost like not even the development we see in the Rise of Kylo Ren comic. We're not even close to even that, right?
No.
This is way younger Ben Solo. This is not
right.
He's not. He's probably not meeting the Snoke figure yet. We'll see.
I mean, based on what I'm guessing it's going to be, is it's going to be very much like, last time we saw Luke in the Mandoverse. I mean, I guess not last time. The last time we saw Luke in the Mandalorian, he was like, I mean, we actually seen him we've seen him a lot of times. I can't believe
he wasn't in
I cannot believe how much he was. He was in the end of season 2
of
the Mandalorian.
Was
of the Mandalorian?
Yeah, and
because
then
he comes in.
Yeah, and then more recently
kicks butts, take names. So my thought is like similarly, like we know the Mandalorian knows him.
Yeah.
He's gonna call him for help. He's gonna show up, and there's gonna be a little boy with him, and they're both gonna be kicking butts and taking names, and like that's it. But it shows them kind of like, I guess it's just gonna be very much like. By the way, they did like each other.
Yeah.
Like
I think the most we could hope for is that Snoke exists and he becomes aware of Ben Solo. Like I think that would be that could be a thing that could happen.
Or like they trace, or the Shadow Council misguides the Republic to or someone in the Republic to go to the Maxine station that we kind of know. Like this is a huge location from both the novels now and the comics. And I'm like, at some point, the Maxine station kind of needs to be depicted in live action, and then Charles Soule and all of Lucasfilm and the story group and everyone decided that's where Snoke is. Essentially, he's like this gardener on this weird space station, this ancient space station.
And for people that don't know what a Maxine station is, it is a space station, but it's like a bucolic space station. It's like think Little Prince, but at like a slightly bigger planetoid. And at least this is the way I imagine. Actually, no. Is it flat? Is the Maxine station like?
I think it's like
an asteroid with like a biodome
metallic structure. I think it's
it's like a biodome. That's
all right. So it's like a biodome on an
space.
asteroid sort of affair. I was like, wait, is it? I thought it was actually spherical.
Because to me, you could have just again what you guys are talking about. Luke and Ben are loving family members, but he's a good mentor. He's teaching Ben what he can about the Force and feeling other life forms and being kind and doing the right thing, but I would like almost, and where I thought the story was going is sort of like, where is this Snoke cloning process at? Because we just saw Gideon, and the Gideon stuff to me just felt like if someone's already able to clone themselves perfectly and give them all the Force powers, that was just fascinating to me. I'm like, so why does Snoke look the way he does? It's, I guess, just to contain the Emperor's essence. And is it Luke's hand? This is something I've been obsessed with as a fan.
I was under the impression though that Moff Gideon was doing this all completely separate from the rest of the council, and no one.
That's under the radar.
So it's like he was that close, and then but the Emperor was never that close. His people in Exegol were never as close as he was. But if he could figure it out,
so fascinating to me, because you'd think the Emperor with the Final Order would have the resources to do tenfold like Gideon's able to do. That's what kind of breaks the lore a little bit.
It comes down to one nerd, man. Like that one guy that tutored under the Kaminoans.
I'm not gonna. Yeah, if anyone's gonna figure it out, Gus Fring's gonna figure it out. But
I wasn't saying Gus Fring. I was saying that scientist that works.
Oh, right, the guy from.
With that long
Dr. Pershing.
Pershing. There you go.
Yeah, that's all set up too in Mando season 3. We essentially Pershing is now he's now had electrolysis essentially, and
he's
so
been
now
lobotomized.
Technically. So what does that even mean? I mean, he held his knowledge about the cloning. So the whole cloning operation on Gideon's end is basically just deteriorated and gone.
Because I think we talked about this back then. Because you can't have them able to clone Force users that far back in the timeline. It wrecks the timeline. So you have to because
Then
You have to eliminate
Then why do
reality.
it if you can't do it? It's just sort of funny.
Yeah,
Because
that's
in
what I'm
reality,
saying.
the
That's-
Mandoverse is
Why
also a
even do it?
prequel because we tell too many prequel stories in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah.
We don't move forward; we look back constantly.
It does grind my gears. It honestly
Yeah,
does.
that's
That's
upsetting,
why like the
honestly.
Rey series is like number one.
Thank you. Move forward.
Yeah, like-
or even the Dawn of the Jedi is also so far back that it's not
Yeah.
doesn't
Yeah.
feel like
Love
a
the
prequel.
idea.
I mean,
right?
Star Wars
Like-
hasn't moved forward in 40 years. Like, you know what I mean? Like, actually taking it. Well, that's not true, right? All the sequels were moving forward, but like, I don't know. Like, yeah, I want to not know what's happening again. It's really the best thing, or what's
Yeah.
coming next, or what it's leading to.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
weird. Like I'm weirdly excited about the Battle of Jakku comics just because they are like moving forward from a time period. Even though it's like now we're a prequel of the now we're telling stories that are prequels of the Mandoverse. like they have to
Right.
fit into the Mandoverse. But like at least
Yeah.
it's like telling stories post Return of the Jedi, which I've been waiting for.
Or now that the Shadow Council has been, seen on screen in the
Yeah.
Mandoverse, it's like, oh, we can just play to this Shadow Council, and these Imperial Remnant exist, and no one else does, but yet they do create a new Moff in the comics you're talking about.
Weirdly put him in shadow for a long time, which is a weird choice because I'm like, this is not a reveal. Anyway, we'll talk about it in a few weeks when we talk about Insurgency Rising.
Right.
Yes, that's what it's called.
Was there anything more about this novel? I know we got a little sidetracked
Sorry.
on the the Mandalorian news.
Just the lifting the temple out of the water. I just wanted to shout that out again. It's been, like my favorite
Super
moment
cool.
of the book. Just like the way that they describe, and then they're like, we're gonna do this, and everyone's gonna forget us. It's not a big deal. That's not why we do this stuff. We do this stuff because we're in desperate need of survival,
Yeah.
and we're trying to help the galaxy. Which I was like,
Exactly.
that's
like we're
the
not.
Jedi. And
No one's going to
there's
remember
countless
us in
examples of
history. We are a footnote at best, but we are doing this because it needs to be done.
and they lift
Yeah.
a temple out of the water, and it's epic, and it's just really cool to like you had the back and forth of them just using all their force power together, and like it was just like 2 pages worth of beautifully
so this
Polis
book
was amazing.
This book did a weird thing to me, where because the two of them do the whole like we're gonna recite Yoda's "do or do not, there is no try,"
we're not
and like that is such a fascinating statement because it's so popular, right? It's grown past.
Is it a fascinating statement? Because it's like it's met with scorn at
so
certain places I'm
but
at, or
let
I'm just
me-
Well, they
like
joke about it. It's like a
okay, I'm
punchline.
But let me
it's like a punchline.
But let me
now.
follow you through the
Again,
journey
Yoda-
ahead.
the
Let me
Yoda
follow you
sneer
through the
piece.
journey ahead, right? Because I fell into it's a punchline, and
It's in Ahsoka though. Ahsoka, I would say, would be the evidence to look at for sort of modern criticism and analysis of the do or do not. There's only.
but
try,
anyone who's
sort of.
criticizing it does not. Okay, no, I don't want to say that. I don't want to say that because that's not fair.
What do you want to say?
What I want to say is I fell back in love with that maxim while reading this book because I literally did the Zen thing where I was sitting in bed and I just started ruminating on it and thinking about it for like an hour. Like I literally spent an hour breaking this thing apart in my head because I'm like, yeah, there are people that say that is an absolute and Jedi don't deal with absolute. It's not an absolute. What it is like, don't worry about it, dude. Like that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like it's not
Reduce
about
anxiety and do
doing
it. Yeah.
It's like do or do not. Like there's no trying. Like
Yeah.
trying is not a thing. It's part of the doing. Like part of the doing.
Right.
And it'll work or it won't, but you don't have control over that. You just do the thing and it works or it doesn't. And it's not about trying. It's about just
Simply begin.
right?
Ben?
Like
simply begin.
I really sat there and I'm like, that is an amazing I just love it. I'm like, that is an amazing statement. Like it is so much deeper than like
Especially
people
if
give
it's
it
like
credit
an
for.
immeasurable obstacle
Yeah.
in front of you.
Yeah.
Like just an incredible feat that you know you're not capable of doing. If you're gonna psych yourself out, like just do it. Just do it.
Just
You know
start
what I mean?
doing. Just start doing.
Do it.
It'll
Do
work
it
or it
instead
won't.
of thinking about
Yeah.
trying. Like this is not gonna work and the struggle
Exactly.
of it all.
Yeah, it is
Trying
amazing. It
inherently
is-
means tempering your expectations with
Exactly.
understanding all the obstacles in the way. It's like no.
Yeah, because then you'll start to imagine your failure if you try.
Yeah.
If you're thinking about trying, I'm saying if you're trying is good, like try, but if you're
But trying is
thinking
part of
about
doing.
Trying, it's going to get in the way of doing. Essentially, that's
People
what I
don't.
think.
You don't try. You just do, or you don't.
Exactly.
Right? Like trying is
Right,
part of the
yeah.
doing. Like,
Yeah.
Once you've taken that first step,
Yes.
you're either doing it or you're not. You just don't know what the outcome is until the end of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, try is just I think associated with sort of anguish. And,
Yeah.
You're like, I'm
Self-doubt.
trying this thing. Yeah, the self-doubt. It's like the word itself is sort of laced with those
Which
sort of
again,
meanings,
think about it. Bring it back to Comac, right? Comac, whose biggest threat is his own internal mind, is because he ruminates on the trying, right? And he doesn't realize about this. Like if he was just actually living by this do or do not, he'd still be a Jedi.
It's so true. He like can't jump that chasm. It's
because
just
he's thinking about the
he has
trying.
Just such a
he's focused on the trying of jumping the
chasm
chasm as opposed
running
to
after Orla.
Because
stops us.
Oh my god! So that's an amazing thing. Like this is George Mann. You're a wonderful author. We're like still figuring this out because here's the thing, because the whole thing is just like basically it's like just do it, just do it, just jump the chasm, and then the thing that Orla breaks into is like, because if you don't jump the chasm, I gotcha. Like I will save you.
We're together,
right? Which is an amazing thing
you.
because if you don't do the thing you're gonna do, it's still probably gonna be okay. Right, like it's not, failure isn't death all the time. Failure is just failure sometimes.
Right, and it's not all about you. Right, there's people around you. You're a network. You give to that, they give back, and that isn't a judgment against you. That's just like that's what we do. We help each other out when we have tough days.
And tie that into Yoda's other big lesson, which is failure the best teacher is sometimes, right? Because even in the not doing, we learn something, right? When we do it and it doesn't work, we still learn something. So we still are doing
it's the fastest
something.
way to wisdom, right? Because the idea of
Yeah.
trying and struggling through something is actually taking away from the learning that you could have if you just failed quicker, essentially.
Right.
So go ahead, be ironic, critique do or do not, there is no try, but there is a really deep meaning there.
Awesome.
Anyway.
I like
I
it.
love it.
I still, it's got me when I was a kid, and
I love that.
Same.
I love that you just like this line that's become so commercial. You're just like, nope, it's still profound, and it was profound
really
when
is.
first time I heard it, and it's still profound today, and that's really true. I'm glad you spent the time.
It's like it's so profound. I'm probably gonna get a sticker to put on my coffee mug. Like, no, but like,
Yeah.
I know it's like jokey, but like
Immortalized
because I want
on your coffee
I do that stuff because I want students to reflect on it, and I'll just like when I have students will look at stuff, like I choose very much what I put on my coffee mug to face forward because I want students to like, because I want a student to be like, oh yeah. I'm like, no, but have you ever really thought about it? And then we'll have a 15-minute conversation about
Your
what that
coffee
means.
mug.
Well, that line is a great coupling with the whole like, I don't believe it, and he's like, that is why you fail. Like that whole.
Yeah,
like it's great. It couples. Like you got to think about where it's used in context, essentially. 'Cause
Totally.
It's about Luke. Like again, I think people pull it out of context, and they're like, "Let's just examine this by itself." And I'm like, "No, look at the entire scene, please," because like if you just connect on sort of the next piece of material where Luke's like, again, it's talking about Luke sort of like, self-doubt, right, in his own belief of what's possible, right, what he's capable of. That's it ties to that as well, and sort of it's all ties together in a nice mesh of sort of being a mentor, being a sensei sort of character.
Absolutely.
A monk on the side of the road, as Kasdan and Lucas would call.
That's a great place to stop, but I don't want to limit anyone. Was there anything else you guys wanted to talk about that tonight?
Just Kyber coffins.
Kyber
That's
coffins.
the last thing I want to say.
Something
much
about
Kyber
Kyber,
coffins.
like giants amounts of Kyber. in this thing.
We're getting
Wild.
like huge chunks of Kyber these days in the comics and here. Echo Stones I think is like the next
Echo Stones.
like the next step.
The metal that I think we have now. We have a new metal ore found on the planet.
Oh yeah, that new mineral.
Yeah.
The Echo Stones. I think that's what the Sith used. So I think the Jedi are gonna have to make their own to sort of contain whatever. I mean, the Sith used them to contain the Drengir on the Amaxine station.
Right, which we do see those. They're in the basement, right? The statues.
Yes, they're unused in the basement of the Jedi Temple, which I could spend the rest of my life just
That
milling around
reminds
there.
We didn't talk about the Sith Temple.
Yes, so I
underneath
want
Jedi
to.
Temple.
I know we're so close.
And Vernestra Road. We did not talk about Vernestra Road.
I know we're so close to this one,
gosh.
but
Very
one
upsetting.
quick note I have is
Don't let me rush us. We clearly missed a
no,
lot.
I know, but we're getting up
did it,
there.
but
We're clocking over two
Just one
hours.
Vernestra Road.
Hour and 40 minutes.
Have we? Oh yeah, because you got the actual recording. Have we had the title of the temple before, the dark side? Because they call it the Shrine of the Depths.
Oh.
Is that new? Have we heard
this
it
was-
referred to it that way before? I can't remember.
We did get more about this temple than we have in a long time.
A lot.
Like they talk
Yeah.
about it in the comics, but you don't get it in novels much. That the Jedi temple was in fact built on top of a Sith temple,
Which
but
is like just awesome.
we often mused about why that was, and I think Grant, you're pretty close on this. Adam, you're probably there too, saying the same thing. I can't tell the difference to you guys anymore. I'm just kidding, but they.
No, I don't think it's-
Yeah,
I take that as
I think
compliment.
Grant, you had said something about it was like supposed to cleanse it, like the Jedi were cleansing the Sith temple, but it's like they talked about it more, and it was more like they were trying to hide it, I guess, or smother it and just sort of
stifle it.
Yeah, and like I think by their light side energy, they I think really they did hope to clean it, to cleanse that area and keep that Sith power at bay, but I don't know. It's a choice, man. It's
suppress
a weird
it,
choice.
right?
Yeah.
And-
Yeah. It was built on a virgin, so I
yeah,
get
the
all these
virgins.
details, right? It's built
Right,
on
right,
a
right,
virgin.
right,
Whatever
right.
that
Forgot
means.
They keep the temple intact because that's where they bring their dark artifacts that they would like to purify, essentially. Like if they find a Sith relic, they bring it down there first and have it like sit in a room and have a couple Jedi meditate around it, and then like
They
and
just
then
throw
they'll
it in a
bring it up
room,
to
but
like
I
the
feel like-
library.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna
But
meditate
also,
on this.
But think
Mask
about
of
the fact
Mom
that,
and
like,
just like thrown in a
right?
corner.
Just chalk it in there. There's just like it's like the desolation of Smaug. It's just like Smaug's pile of stuff. It's
Yeah.
just this thing of just like dark stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just like to bring it back to whatever, but
Lord
like
of the Rings
but
again?
or Hobbit. But I feel like the thing that just wilded me when I was reading this, I'm like, yeah, and you know who inherited that all? Palpatine.
Yeah,
Like that whole
Ultimately.
sub basement of all these dark side artifacts. Palpatine just walked in and went like, hello. Like,
I know. So that's what I want the like path, the fallen council to do on Tanalorr is just like hoard like Jedi like relics. There's like that's our whole mission. All they do is dungeon dive. They're creating the greatest Jedi library of all time. Like just hoarding relics and like poring over information and learning, and that's all they're doing on Tanalorr.
yeah.
Now I said it.
yeah.
I like it. I like that fanfic.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah, it's wild that Sith temple's down there, and but it opens up a whole lot of fun stories. We got some good stuff with Dooku meddling down there, and Mommin's mask, I think, made an appearance at one point. It might be down there
Yep.
somewhere. Yeah, good times.
Yeah.
I want to talk about
Good times.
Orla Jareni for real quick. Like,
Oh,
is it
sure.
my
Okay.
imagine?
Yeah.
So, I feel some kind of way about Orla.
The
Orla
first Force
Jareni.
Ghost? Sorry. my
Yes,
bad.
that's what I was gonna say. Because this isn't the.
First canon Force Ghost?
I think she has, because it's not just this book. She's been a Force ghost. My note is like, I'm like, she's been a Force ghost before, right? Like
If
she's.
you turn up the volume in The Last Jedi, she's whispering to Rey.
I love that.
Just appearance of the Force
I
Temple.
love that.
Tree.
No, I think for other characters like Elzar Mann in like the last novel, they always play it off as it's a hallucination, but I think Orla Jareni is like legit Force ghost.
I had the same read as you. I
Yeah,
thought this was the
it did
first
feel like she
glimmer of a
was-
Force ghost, essentially.
Yeah, communicating beyond the grave, right?
Yeah.
Which like that is precedented, right? Because like we get
Not at this
in
time period, right?
well, but even in episode 2, it is now kind of canon that we
Anakin, no!
no,
Oh, yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
that
yeah.
is legit.
Yeah.
Actually,
Back in
Yoda
that's
hearing the
hilarious.
voice of Qui-Gon beyond the grave,
Right, but I mean, Skywalker Saga, Qui-Gon Jinn's the first to do it. So
but not at that point. Still, he hasn't come back as a full Force ghost. So I don't think it's unprecedented.
I think
that,
he has, because like on the sly, he was meeting with Yoda. I think
By
he's
episode 2?
transformed himself at that point. Yeah.
All right. Okay. All right.
And like we just find out later that like Yoda's like, oh yeah, you have this mission, but we don't know how long they've been talking, and I don't think it matters. I think it was like instantaneous, and he was able to go into the Force, into the living Force, and become a Force ghost. But then, and then sooner or later he met up with Yoda and whatever, like after he's
Right.
dealing with his own apotheosis in ghost form. But yeah, that was my take on all that. Was like
Okay.
he was a Force ghost like pretty soon.
pretty
But
quickly.
anyways, the point of it is,
Yeah.
this is before that, before it's like vetted, and the Clone Wars was like, this is how the Force Ghost thing happened. There was like a whole scene with some I don't know, on some weird planet.
Force priestesses.
Yeah, they were like Force priestesses or like some sort of oracles of the Force or something. I don't know. It was wild. A lot of wild things
When
happen.
people see Force priestesses in like the next, I don't know, Filoni series, I have no idea what the audience is going to make.
I mean, but that was my favorite stuff.
We are going to be like popping
Yeah.
for it. Like we will be out of our seats.
Yeah.
But like the regular viewer is just like, what's happening?
No, I mean, but like really bold strokes by Filoni to do that. So honestly, actually, the Force gods and the Force priests and stuff, like, not my favorite. But the fact that he's willing to go that deep into the lore and witchcraft and all that, like, I really applaud.
It's kind of like I appreciate the swing, right? Like that, like you're willing to go weird and cool. That's great. I'm never gonna like dissuade people from being
high
weird.
fantasy, right? Like super high fantasy.
Yeah,
like, there's bizarre choices, and then there's like super high fantasy choices that read as bizarre. But like, I would just say it's high fantasy and it's stuff we've seen before, so it's pretty safe still. Like nothing's really outside the mold, right? Like the Mortis stuff, you're like, oh, it's the Mortis god. It's like literally the statue of the brother, or whatever. I forget, or the father. I mean,
right?
Yeah, wild. Anyways, I wanted to mention that but I'm gonna have to go through and like find it again. But I swear we've seen, like, she talked to Elzar Mann in the last book, I think.
Yeah, there's vibes there that she's definitely kind of like something's going on there. Yeah.
In our headcanon, she's the first Force ghost.
Yeah, because she's
matters.
an awesome character. When she effing died, I was like, no, like
that was a gut punch.
She was the coolest looking Jedi out of all. Like she had like a double bladed
white lightsaber.
So I was like, that's
and like her skin's bone white and all her clothes are white. It's just like, no, she's too cool.
She looks like a Force ghost.
Yeah,
basically.
already.
She looks like a Force ghost. She looks ethereal. Yeah.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I think some of this stuff is right there in front of us, and we're missing it. Yeah, but fun.
Yeah,
the series is cooking now.
Yeah,
you know
it
what
really
I mean?
is. Yeah, it's getting there. Like, I think Kevin Scott just posted on Instagram, like the last line. I mean, it's just like the end or something like that of the final arc of the High Republic comic. For Marvel.
Okay.
Like, but like just the fact that it's done. like he's just like, I can't believe it's done.
Wow.
Like, it's just,
and is it Claudia Gray or is it Charles Soule who's writing like the finale?
Soule, I believe.
Soule.
Yeah.
I think he finished that a while back too, right? Didn't he put a?
Yeah. He had a post about having like he's like a draft, but he was like, I feel really good about this one.
Yeah, I think the lead up time is longer for novels than comics for that reason. I think there's like more of an editing process, probably with the
book
novels
looked
and the
huge.
comics.
Too.
Yeah,
it looked like
I'm
a
guessing
doorstop.
it's going to be like a tome.
Yeah. Which would be cool. I'd love a like massive.
It could be a 700 page like again, having fallen deeply into the middle of the Wheel of Time books. I'm like 800, fine, whatever.
Yeah.
Good, give it to me.
Yeah, like you get a 700 page Wheel of Time book, you're like, oh, this is a shorty.
Ben, I'm reading the 5th book right now, and I'm 200 pages into a 100-page book, and like nothing has happened.
Yeah.
Nothing's happened, and I'm loving it.
Yeah.
Like, just spend more time talking to each other. This is great. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I
totally sold on it.
I couldn't believe how much it was one summer. I could not. I read 7 books in 2 months.
Oh, that's insane.
Yeah, and it was the greatest summer of my life. Like, I swear to God, I just worked this silly bartending job and went home and read until 4 a.m. every day.
Time is a wheel.
Time is a wheel. Yeah, time is a black circle.
Wheel turns.
A flat circle. Sorry.
Yeah.
Anyways,
should we talk about future content?
If you have something to say about future content,
possibly. Yes. I've updated the spreadsheet. So next week we have another book. We have speaking of Mace Windu, we're not gonna cover it. We're not gonna cover it next week because we gotta give people time to call it. But we got coming out next Tuesday. The Mace Windu, The Glass Abyss is coming out. Novel.
Out.
So we'll cover that soon, but we like to give people a couple of weeks to at least read it. We do have a comic series that just wrapped up this week, which is High Republic related, so we can continue our High Republic if we want, which is the Ty Urich Saber for Hire.
Oh yeah, that's been great. I've been reading that.
Oh, I love.
Yeah, so you want to do that and just talk about whatever else that gives us a little bit to cover, and we'll talk about whatever random news happens.
Maybe we won't have a 2-hour podcast.
There's a new set of.
I don't know. Depends. So we'll read episodes or issues 1 through 4 of the Ty Urich Saber for Hire Dark Horse miniseries.
Far out.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
And they just released Dark Horse just released in this week 3 High Republic comics. They released Saber for Hire, the Dispatches from the Occlusion Zone,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
which is a new miniseries, which I was not even aware was happening, and then I think another one. Oh, and then Ewoks #1 just came out.
Ooh,
So
we need more Ewoks content on the
lots
stream.
of lots of content.
Far out, man. Lots of comic
Yeah.
content. We're always swimming
Yeah.
in it. It's pretty nice.
Yeah.
Rad, man.
There's always some news story every week that we get to cover.
Yeah, they'll drop like 1 or 2 nuggets out there for us to think about, which is nice.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. So we will, I guess, talk to you next week. This was a blast, guys. Great covering this High Republic content, man. I love it so
Super
much.
fun.
I'm so grateful to
Super
have all
fun.
this stuff.
Great time.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, thanks,
Yeah,
guys.
if you stuck with us this whole way, you're welcome. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you very much.
I almost said you're welcome at the exact same time you did, so, yeah.
No, thanks very much. Really appreciate it. We love having a couple of beverages and talking about Star Wars at the Cantina. So that's great. We will talk to you next week on Cantina Chronicles.